Hey, everybody. I believe we are live. All right. Looks like we are live indeed. Let me get my chat set up here. All right. Zany Art Night. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Number one indeed. Shirley McGurley. Mike, how are you? Dade, hello. Cheerios are delicious. All right, everybody, let's get right into it. And hello to all of those of you out there lurking. I actually was thinking about something this evening while I was in the shower. It's where I do a lot of my good thinking. And I had to look up some stuff real quick. Well, I looked up one stuff very quickly before I came down here. I was really pressed for time. But I was surprised at what I found, and we are actually going to talk about that tonight. It's got to do with my favorite subject in the whole wide world, the nitrogen cycle. So not a huge discovery, but just something to talk about. Got me thinking about a few things. And then when I was like, I just never thought about it like that before. And so I decided I would do a little quick search. I won't even call it research. I just did a quick AI search and got all the information I needed. If it was 100% accurate or not quite, doesn't matter. It was close enough. It told me what I needed to know. So we'll talk about all that in a little bit. Kendra. Well, hello to them as well. Hamilton, how are you this evening? Kendra, thank you. It's got to be the honey nut. Definitely got to be the honey nut. If it's not the honey nut, then you got to sprinkle some sugar on it. Hey, Eugene, how are you this evening? Cecil, how are you? Oh, look at that. A double whammy from Kendra. I'm on fire today. 16 people. We hardly even got started. It's going to be a hell of a live stream. Oh, I got you. Well, thank the girls for me. I appreciate it. Winston, hello. Having a hard time keeping up with everybody coming in tonight. So we don't have a lot going on. I still have not changed the filters in my damn fancy goldfish tank. So somebody please remind me tonight. Other than that, I don't think we're going to do a whole lot. I do have a show and tell for later for my fans, my members rather, that wrong channel there. My members who were here Wednesday night, I told you all a story, and I told you I had a photograph of that very moment, and I brought it downstairs tonight. So once we sit down tonight, I'll show you my donkey picture. I'll let your minds do whatever you want with that. This is Zane. Thought you were here already. This koi here is getting huge. Well, huge by my standards for this pond and for as long as I've had it. Steve was over here the other day, and he saw him live and in person. He was shocked by how big it actually is compared to what it looks like on camera. And when we get to my other 125, I want to try to remember to shine the spotlight on that because the pearl cichlid in there is starting to look absolutely amazing. Shit, I wish I could go online shopping with somebody else's money. I do plenty of online shopping, but it's my own money. Or at least it's the credit card company's money until I pay them back. All right, let's just move on to the next thing. So this is the one we need to change the filters on. And I keep saying we'll do it when we get done feeding everybody. We'll come back and do this later. But tonight we're going to use a different strategy, different strategery. We're going to feed them, and then I'm going to swap out those filters while we're still at this tank. Because damn it, I ain't going to forget again tonight. I probably will. By the time I'm done, by the time they're done feeding, I'll have probably forgotten again. So I got the glass wiped down on this one, and I did top off. I didn't do a water change or anything, but I topped the water off and wiped the glass down on Wednesday. So that looks pretty sharp right now. All right, let me see here. I saw some nice wrecks earlier today, too. Although I wouldn't try to put an aquarium on them. You know what I realized tonight when I was trimming up my beard? I have gone from gray to completely danned off the white. My beard is friggin' Santa Claus Snow White. My mustache still has a little bit of darkness to it, but my beard is no longer even gray. It's just white. So you can call me Dandolf now. They are definitely adorable the way they wriggle around. Oh, shit, where'd you guys go? Come back. There you are. Michael, how are you? Christopher, how are you? Well, I got 3 different colors going on. My hair is still brown, my mustache is salt and pepper, and then my beard is just fucking white. I guess I'm going to have to start letting it grow out really long. Start wearing a robe, carrying a staff around with me. I'm not really a robe and staff kind of guy. All right, let's just keep moving. No, we're not going to keep moving. We're going to wait until they're done eating, and then we're going to change that damn filter. So I guess while we're waiting, I can smoke a joint. Or cone, rather. It sounds weird saying to roll, you know, I'm going to pack a cone or I'm going to smoke a cone. It still feels like a joint to me. It's just a cone-shaped joint with a paper tip on the end. Makes it a little easier to smoke. Makes it a hell of a lot easier to pack up. I guess I should open the window over here. It's going to get so chilly in here so quickly. Spent about the last hour with the space heater running to warm the room up. I guess I can always turn it back on. Oh yeah, that's some cold ass air coming in from outside. I'm already sick of the cold weather, and it hasn't even gotten like cold yet. Last night was our first frost warning, but I don't think we got any overnight, so I think we did okay on the frost. It didn't look like any of the flowers outside were too boogered up. Oh, the new betta fish in there is doing fantastic. It looks amazing. I'm so in love with it already. I was watching it this morning. It was chasing shrimp around the tank, so I thought that was adorable. And when it just hangs in the water and splays its fins out. The way the fins ripple with the light shining, you know, the floodlight shining down on it. Oh, it's just amazing looking. So happy with that already. JP, how are you this evening? The new betta fish is actually looks like it's probably close to full grown. There were some that were in the little cups that were really small, and I thought about getting one of them because I assumed it was still very young and I'd get, you know, a longer duration out of it. I paid $15 for it. No, I didn't. I actually, the one I went with was the $9.99 one. Was it? No, because after tax and everything, it was almost $18. So I must have got the $15 one. Um, Yeah, I wasn't going to pick a small one just for the sake of getting a small one. I picked the one that I thought looked amazing, and that's the one I brought home. So, you know, $15 if it lives for a year and a half. That's you know, a lot of people spend $25 to go see a 2 hour movie. If I can spend $15 and get a year and a half out of a fish, I'm cool with that. No, we can't see that. I'd have to take the camera up all the way upstairs. I don't think I'd get connection that far away from the laptop, and I also don't want to walk through the whole house with my camera. I will shoot some more video of it to update people, but that one is not here in the fish room with us. That is up in my office. What'd you get, Shirley? Mine is just a regular half moon. I think it was a half moon betta. Harryman, how are you? Well, I just want people to know what they're getting when they tune in. Ooh, yellow and black. That sounds cool. Oh, well, that's cool. At least you gave a fish a good home. All right, I'm going to go get a bucket, and then we're going to do a filter change, dear Liza. Actually, I don't need a bucket. I can use this small container. Man, I was packing up my cones this evening. I was watching some Doctor Who and just sitting there, you know, packing several up just to get them. I put them all in a container, and then I got, you know, 3 or 4 days worth. I don't have to worry about it. And so I grind all my weed up, and I grind it into a pill container, just, you know, a little plastic pill container. And then when I'm packing each cone, I can just tap a little bit out of the pill container into a funnel. You know, I tap the right amount out, and I just pack the cone, and then I do the next one, etc. I got about halfway through it, and I dropped my damn pill container on the floor, and like half the weed that was in there, like, went splattering across the floor. And trust me, once something falls on my basement floor, you know, like weed or something, you ain't cleaning it up and smoking it. It'll have cat hair and everything else in it. And that, I've accidentally smoked hair before. You don't want to do that. So once it hits the floor, it's trash. It's not a big deal. I have plenty more to replace it, but it's always a bummer when you see something like that happen. All right, let's get in here. Man, I can already feel the temperature dropping like a stone. All right, let me get you a little more elevated look so you can see what's going on. So I just did the filters not long ago, so the biofilter will be clean. I don't need to worry about that. So we'll just pull these filters out, and the backside's not. Well, hang on, let me turn this light on for you. The backside's not completely disgusting, but it is, you know, boogered up enough that it's blocking the flow going through it. So if you remember what they looked like when I did that last filter change, they looked like life was evolving on them. So this is pretty good for me. All right, so if you're not familiar with the routine, I take the polyester batting and I just cut it into little squares or rectangles instead of sliding the sock over this, which is the way it comes, you know, from the factory. I just fold it around, clip it on. The back will still be open, but that doesn't matter. You make sure that's the back side. And remember, when you're putting it in, don't just slide it in because the biofilter will booger it all up. You pull the biofilter out and then you slide them back in together, and it keeps that polyester nice and flat on the frame. If you just try to slide the polyester in, it bunches up, and then the water just flows underneath of it, and it's not really doing anything at that point. Of course, taking it out is not a problem. And we're just going to do the same thing 2 more times. And then we can move on to the next tank, and I will try to remember to turn that spotlight on. When Steve was here, I pointed it to it so he could get a better look at it. And man, it just lit it up. It was awesome. Fish looks like a swimming disco ball. You know what? No, that's got plenty of water flowing through it. That's good. All right, 3rd time's the charm. And whatever little bit of debris we kicked into the tank by doing that filter change will pretty quickly get picked right back up by the new filters, and it'll be clear as a bell in 15 or 20 minutes. So, yay, work done. That was pretty easy when you really get down to it. That there is the benefit of the hang on the back filters. People ask me, like, what's the better one and what's the difference, etc. That's the difference. You can do filter changes on a hang on the back filter. Just, you don't have to worry about doing it during a water change or anything. You can just change out the filter in a minute and you're done, and you can just go. Whereas the canister filters, you can go a lot longer between water changes on them. But when you do, it's just a lot more of a pain in the ass to actually do the water changes. And my 55 over here that we're going to be seeing shortly, I still haven't gotten around to doing the filter change on that. So it was done on, I want to say, May 5th of 2024. So it is now like 16 months or something since I've done a filter change on my 55. I'm probably suspecting that it's a little clogged up, but water's still flowing out of it. Well, sort of flowing out of it. Mostly it's flowing into the damn Java moss that's growing all over the spray bar. All right, let me get down there and feed them their algae wafers. So that pearl cichlids not only getting big, but it is looking fabulous. Oh, there's my little clown pleco. I always forget I got a clown pleco in this tank. He's hiding down there in his cave. I can see him with the spotlight shining over here. I don't know if you guys will be able to see him or not. He's actually right here. You can see my finger. He's just in the corner of this cave. Put a little food down that end and see if it draws him out. Ooh, a thing dropped right next to him. There he goes. He's going to come out for it. All right, let me get caught up on some comments here. Spark my joint back up. All right, let me see where I was. Somewhere up here. All right, I'm somewhere up here. Let me get caught back up. All right, there I was. Blue Mint, how are you this evening? Oh, killifish would be interesting. Oh, thank you, Blue Mint. Thank you, Dade. When is the next water change? I don't know when we'll be doing another water change. Maybe we'll do one Sunday night. We're definitely not doing it tonight. Hey, Kane, how are you? Did you find any good wood the other day? I do not have any baby diamond tetras at the moment that I know of. We can, look closer when we put the camera on that tank, but I don't think there's any babies in there at the moment. Yeah, forgot I'd mentioned smoking some hair. Yeah, it's fucking rough. Believe me, you don't want to do it. Rush is getting a new drummer. I've never really been a huge fan of Rush. I don't dislike them, but I'm not a huge fan, and I certainly don't follow along. We all know that Ace Frehley died yesterday. Ace Frehley actually sort of, in a way, got me to what music I actually listened to tonight, and certainly was not Kiss. I always piss somebody off whenever I talk about Kiss. So out of respect for the late Ace Frehley, I'll keep my thoughts to myself tonight. Steve. He is better than a disco ball. He's not better than disco, but he's better than a disco ball. Yeah, the silver dollar, that was the other one I was surprised by when Steve was here and I put the spotlight on it. Like, I'd never really noticed all the subtle coloration in the silver dollars. And I'm not talking about like the red of their fins. That developed as they grew. I didn't know they were going to have red fins when they were young. But when they turn in the light, I mean, they're like diamonds, just like my diamond tetras. They've got that iridescent sparkle to them. They're just amazing. There's hints of greens and red and gold. There's all kinds of fucking colors in there. Um, so I was really surprised by those. I'm more happy with my silver dollars now that I've been in it a long time, and I'm really a big fan of my silver dollars. I think those are awesome fish. I love them. Do I overfeed my fish? Probably. I've got the standard model paint jobs. Like the big ones are just a regular silver dollar, and then the small ones are spotted silver dollars. I don't know of any other species, and I got them by accident. I just went back when I got the first few silver dollars. They only had 3 or 4, and I wanted more, and so I went back a week later when they had more in, and I bought the ones they had, and I thought they looked a little different, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. It wasn't until over time somebody pointed out that the ones with the spots on them are a different species. And sure enough, they sort of topped out and stopped growing, and the other ones just kept right on going and got twice their size. So the spotted ones are just smaller. The big ass motherfuckers swimming around there. That's just your standard model paint job. Blackberry and tiger. That sounds awesome. What kind of color is the rainbow shark? They're usually described as like a grayish green with red fins, and they vary. Some of them are darker, some of them are greener. Mine almost looks black at a glance, but if you get a good look at it, you can tell it's not actually black. Patterdale, how are you this evening? We'll get to the tank that's got my red tail shark in it. I have one of those too. Hardness and pH climbing, that can cause health issues. It would depend on what kind of fish you have in the tank and how frequently you're doing water changes, etc. Ooh, giant silver dollar sounds cool. You got a 5-inch piece? That's awesome. See, that's my problem. 8 inches. Wow, that's huge. When I go out looking for, you know, even if I'm not looking for it, if I just stumble upon wood, I always find wood that looks amazing, but my sense of scale is just so out of whack. I'll see something that looks like a small piece of wood and I'll bring it home and it like I couldn't fit it in my tank, you know, in any direction because it's, you know, way like I always get that off. I it's a hard like well, I mean, you can see I brought this one home one day because it was an amazing piece of wood. And you can see the size of that one. I mean, it's an entire branch of a tree. It comes all the way out here and sticks up. This is not part of it. This is just a branch I've got sitting there. It's another tree I brought. And then it doesn't even fit in the tank. It sticks all the way up out the top, but I got some moss growing on it. So that's okay. I like that. But yeah, that's a big ass piece of wood. And I thought you know, obviously I knew it was a big piece of wood when I brought it back, but I didn't think it was that fucking big. I didn't think I'd have trouble getting it in a 125. And you should have seen the struggling act I had to do to even get it in that far. And that's as far as it'll go without cutting it anymore. There's just no way to get this fork into the tank. I'd either have to cut this beam or I'd have to cut the wood. And so I just left it sticking out. But I also like the stuff growing up and out of the tank. And you see that piece of wood's got moss growing on it. I have to get mushrooms growing off of this. So that's pretty cool. Look, I got a new root runner and new bud with new growth on it coming out on my anubias here. That's all new growth. Just had a flower finish. So yeah, it's tough for me to find appropriately sized pieces of wood and bring them home without finding out they're way bigger than they should have been. All right, let's have a look at my angelfish here. So water hardness is more important than a lot of people give it credit for. I was actually thinking about that this afternoon, as a matter of fact. All right, let me see where I was. All right. Try to get caught up on comments before I get too far behind, and I'll try to remember your water hardness. If I do forget to talk about the water hardness and the pH, please remind me. Heather's? No, I never saw Heather's. I'm familiar with it though, but I never saw it. All right. Yeah, red-tailed sharks are bastards. It depends on what the other fish are, though. They're only slightly territorial towards is it conspecifics? I don't remember the words. Fish that look like them or are similar in coloration or whatever, they will terrorize to death. I've had to move my sharks around a lot to get them into a community where they wouldn't just terrorize other fish to death. Morning, Driftwood. How are you? I've heard both from everybody. I bought rainbow sharks originally because I heard from everyone that the rainbow sharks were less aggressive than the red tails. And over the years, you know, since I've been doing the YouTube thing, I've heard both. You know, I've probably had just as many people say, no, it's the red tails that are more aggressive as I've had say, no, it's the, you know, rainbows that are more aggressive. Personally, I didn't really see a difference in both of them. I have one of each, and I've had several over the years, and I've always had issues with them. They're a cool community fish, and they're an awesome fish in general, but they are definitely a community fish with caution. You really have to understand how they see the world, and in order to get them into a tank where they're not going to terrorize other fish. And even then, they're still going to have that sort of what I think of as the get off of my lawn kind of mentality. I don't mind that. I don't care if it like darts out and chases a few fish away and then turns around and goes back into its little hole. I've had them in tanks with like Siamese algae eaters, for example, The reason that shark was in that 125 is it used to be in my discus tank, and I've got 2 Siamese algae, well, now 1 Siamese algae eater in there, and I had to separate them. That shark was just relentlessly chasing those Siamese algae eaters around simply because they're the same shape. They're not even the same color, but they're that same sort of shark-looking fish, and he would just not let them get a moment's peace. They would just hide, and he would hunt them down and chase them around. And so I had to put him in the tank you just saw him in, and there's not really any fish in there that he bothers with other than the sort of get off of my lawn kind of aggression, which again is not a problem. So they're awesome fish, but they are definitely a community with caution fish, at least in my experience, for whatever that's worth. Shamu, if he were here joining us, he would tell you about sharks and whatnot. He's got a tank full of them. Ever since I've been doing YouTube, he's always had a tank full of sharks. All right, so with the water hardness, the reason water hardness is important is it has to do with the fish's ability to osmoregulate. I don't think, at least I'm going to get into some potentially treacherous territory here. I personally don't think pH shifting or whatever means fuck all. If it shifts up to, 12, then yeah, obviously you got, that'll burn the skin off of you if you touch it. Like bleach has a pH of 12. But normal ranges of pH that we see in our tanks, up to maybe 8.5 or whatever, 5.5 to 8.5. You just get swings like that throughout the day, and if it can change rapidly without bothering the fish, I just don't believe that it changing slowly over time and slowly adjusting is really going to be that detrimental to the fish. Then this is just my hypothesis. I don't have any solid evidence to back this up. This is just my observations over the years and my experience. I think people, when they talk about a fish having like pH shock, you raise the pH too fast or you lowered the pH too fast. I think what's going on there is more to do with the water hardness. We can typically associate, and I can explain why later if you want, but we typically associate hard water with higher pHs. It's a good rule of thumb. It's not always true, but it's a good rule of thumb. If the water's harder, it's probably going to have a higher pH. If it's softer, it's probably going to have a lower pH. And so when you've got a pH of 8, and then you do a big water change and you suddenly got a pH of 5.5, it's not the pH swing that fucked up the fish. It's the fact that you took hard water and replaced it with very soft water, and the fish's system can't adjust to that much osmotic shock all at once. You can gradually shift the fish, from softer water into harder water, but you've got to give its body, maybe up to months to fully acclimate between one condition and the other. Some fish can go in a wide range. Gouramis are pretty universal, but some fish kind of need to be in softer water. Some kind of fish, need to be in harder water, etc. So what's going on is osmoregulation is the way our bodies, fish's bodies, any animal, really any animal. I was going to say, get into the brackish animals, but brackish animals do this too, except they're the world fucking champions at doing it. So if you drink a lot of salty water or something like that, it's going to move, fluids around in your body because of mineral concentrations and so on and so forth. And while osmosis is a passive reaction, where if you've got a membrane and you got salty water on one side and fresh water on the other side, the fresh water is going to move through the membrane into the salty water. So something like that is going on within the fish's body or our body, depending on how much saltiness we consume. Remember, our aquarium's on the inside. So if a fish, the cell salinity is a very low salinity, and then you put the fish in a higher salinity, i.e. harder water, there's an imbalance between the mineral concentrations on the one side of the cell wall versus the other side of the cell wall. And so it starts pushing water around. Now, osmoregulation is not a passive process. Osmosis is, but our bodies and fishes' bodies, etc., have the ability to functionally move water. We can pump water out of cells or draw water into cells as needed, but there are limits. And how rapidly it changes, that makes a huge difference. 2 tablespoons of table salt is, if you take 2 tablespoons of table salt at one dose, that is enough to kill an adult human. We have a specific salinity that our cells want to be at. We're an animal that is referred to as stenohaline. The fish you're looking at are all stenohaline. Well, actually, some of those in there are euryhaline. I'm lying to you. So stenohaline simply means narrow range of salinity, which is what we are. We can't drink salt water and we can't drink super fresh water. We have to have a certain mineral concentration in our body, and we have a fairly narrow window of what's acceptable. And whether it's a saltwater fish or a freshwater fish doesn't matter. Saltwater fish still have a very narrow range of salinity. It might be a high salinity, but it has to be within that acceptable range. They can't move around. Euryhaline, meaning wide range of salinity, for very descriptive name, is obviously are the what we call brackish fish, that can swim back and forth and up and down and go from saltwater to freshwater. Again, they are the world champions at the osmoregulation. So your water hardness is important, but it depends on how fast it's changing. It depends on what kind of fish you got, et cetera, et cetera. So you can ask me any follow-ups or et cetera on that as well. Let me get caught up on some of these comments. Thank you, Dade. Quaz, how are you? My joint went out again. I got to relight it. I can smoke a whole joint in one go. Well, not in one go, but I mean, I can light it and smoke it until it goes out. No problem when I'm by myself. Even if I'm smoking super casual, I can smoke it over like a 20-minute period. It dies way down and I can puff it back up to life and keep smoking. But I can't do it when I'm on a live stream. I get to talking, and as soon as I think about it, my joint's out again. All right, let's move on to the next tank. Let me get caught up on the comments real quick. Do I know anything about lionfish? No, I have no idea. Yeah, I know the lionfish are the super invasive saltwater. I know that kind of lionfish, but I don't know anything about keeping them. I don't know if there's a freshwater. You might be able to keep them in an aquarium. They'd need a big-ass aquarium. I see them down at House of Tropicals in tanks all the time, so I'm assuming people buy them. Yeah, they'll eat any fucking thing. They're definitely aggressive. Colombian shark catfish. They are beautiful, but man, they get really big really fast if they're what I think they are. Iceman, how are you? Thank you. Blue bar pygmy sunfish. Wow, they sound awesome. All right, somebody can stop signing me. I'm all caught up now. Yeah, I've tried. There's my red-tailed shark. I've tried to, I've brought home different sunfish from around here, and I've tried to identify the ones we have. I'm sure in other places I could find other ones. In fact, I know I could because they stock the ponds with stuff, and I brought home a pumpkin seed one time, which is like the most amazing sunfish there is. They get huge, and they're just stunning. It looks more like a cichlid than it does a sunfish. But when I was trying to identify the ones I had, which were either just common bluegill or the green sunfish, again, gorgeous, beautiful sunfish, but really aggressive. I saw all of the types of sunfish we have here in Maryland, and I was stunned, or just all the different types of sunfish there are. There was a lot of them, and some of them are amazing. I think around here, I know we've got like red eye rock bass. I catch those fairly often, or I used to where I used to fish. It depends on what body of water I'm fishing in. Mostly I fish in Pretty Boy when I do fish. And all I ever really catch out there is the bluegill and the green sunfish. There's a shit ton of the green sunfish, and there's probably hybrids of the two because I'm pretty sure they can interbreed. I don't think I've ever caught any other kind of sunfish out there, though. I was getting ready to come over and flick my ashes on the camera as if it was the ashtray. That's the mushrooms working on me. Haha, I didn't tell you guys I drank some mushroom tea before we started. Jaguar cat, that sounds gorgeous. Yeah, I've had catfish that were like that. Thank you, King. No, sunfish and cichlids are not. They're completely different. I looked into that too because for a while I was wondering if sunfish were cichlids, but they're not. Cichlids are tropical species, and sunfish are a cold water species. I always get confused on like the family and genus and species and all that stuff. So I can't say whether they're in the same family or they're the same genus. They might be something distantly related because they're fish, but they're not closely related at all. You'd think so by looking at them. I also brought in some of my mushroom syrup tonight. I thought I was going to maybe do a cocktail between my actual mushroom tea that I drank and the fake weird tea stuff. I don't know if I want to do that now. I don't know if that would be a good idea or not. I'll give it a little while, see what happens. All right, let me finish this joint and then we'll move on to the next tank. And remember, I do have an actual topic I want to talk about tonight. I've not forgotten about that. It's not super complicated or anything. In fact, if you want, I can start talking about it now while you look at the other tanks because I'm running out of things to say. So you can either throw me some bait, lure me into some conversation, or I can just tell you what I was thinking about with the nitrogen cycle. This batch of mushrooms turned out surprisingly strong. Like remarkably strong. So Steve, if you do eat any of those, fucking go lightly on them. You definitely want to take it easy. I would not recommend eating the entire eighth. Excuse me. I've had a few clown loaches get to 8 or 9 inches. It may not sound big when you say a loach gets 10 inches. A fucking 10-inch loach is a big fish. My clown loaches were in a 125. One of them was about, I don't know, probably at least 8 to 9 inches. The other one was about 7. And then the other one never grew at all from the day I got it. And it was still like 4 inches long or 3.5 inches long. Or I mean, I'm sure it grew a little bit. It was several years old when it died. But I had that thing that always happens when I get the clown loaches. They live fine for a certain period of time and then they don't. I've never been able to treat them. I've never been able to medicate them. Never been able to figure out why they just always do that. But I finally gave up on trying to keep the clown loaches, which is a shame. I really do like them a lot. I'm a big fan of loaches in general, and the clown loaches are just fantastic. And when they get really big like that, it's an impressive fish. If you've ever seen a big 10 or 12 inch long clown loach, they're a really impressive fish. All right, I'm starting to misplace stuff and can't figure out what I'm doing. I am in the States indeed. I'm in Maryland. Yeah, I was going to talk about the bumblebee type catfish and the reclusive nocturnal kind. I'm just kind of done with those. My striped Raphael is big enough that I can see him, and he does come out at feeding time. But I've had bumblebee catfish in the past. I had a jelly catfish in the past. I've had some banjo catfish, some farwellas. Farwella, is that what it is? The whiptail catfish. The whiptails were all right. I didn't have a lot of success with those either. That's another one I kind of gave up on trying to keep. But I'd see them from time to time. They might hang on the glass or hang on a piece of wood or something. But all the other ones are just, they would hide, and then presumably they would come out and feed at night when, I wasn't there to see them. And then I'd forget they were in there. 2 years would go by and I'd see a glimpse of a fin. I'd be like, oh, that's right. I got that fucking bumblebee catfish in there, don't I? And so I just don't see any point in a fish like that. Now, having said that, I don't mind fish that are somewhat reclusive. It's always cool to have a fish that hides a lot. And so it's kind of a treat when it comes out and makes an appearance or whatever. But it's got to do that sometimes. It can't just never, just knowing it's hiding in the tank somewhere is not the thrill. The thrill is seeing it from time to time. My red tail loach, you can kind of see through the cave where the catfish is. You see those red fins back there. That's one of those fish that is really, really reclusive. But every now and again, it'll make an appearance at feeding time. And of course, I've got the tank set up that I can sort of look through there and see them a little bit. That's definitely one I won't be buying again, though. It got bigger than I was expecting it to, and it's not a social loach at all. It's very reclusive. It's not friendly towards the other loaches. I always just assume that loaches, piled on like a pile of puppies. The more the merrier. They just seem to love each other's company, even if they're different species. But apparently that one is not the case. I was also told that about my skunk loaches, and I've always loved my skunk loaches. I still have one left in there that's about 9 years old. He's probably 10 years old now, 2025. Yeah, he's probably at least 10 years old. He's probably 11 now, I'm thinking about it. I don't know if you just saw the loach go underneath of the catfish, but that was pretty cool. Man, he's making all kinds of appearances. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Just talking about how we seldom get a glimpse, but every now and again he comes out and shows his face at feeding time, and he did it twice. That was awesome. Good job, fish. I've trained you well. Must be my awesome mushroom mind powers. Let's see. That was what you were going to ask about the catfish? Yeah, I had a bumblebee jelly, and I won't get another one of those again. I've had several bumblebees, but I gave up. that was years ago. I haven't had one in a long time. I had the Asian bumblebee. No, the Asian is the Asian one the one that stays small. There's one that gets about like 4 or 5 inches, and then the other one stays like 2. I had the little 2-inch job. Yeah, I had this. No, I must have had the Asian then, because mine definitely didn't get 8 inches. Yeah, my clown plecos are really reclusive too. But that's one I do see. That's almost the perfect example of one that I do see enough to make it interesting when I see it. It's like, oh yeah, that fish. Yeah, there are plenty of catfish out there that are diurnal, meaning daytime. The red-tail loach, Shirley, is not a gregarious loach. It doesn't like to be in a group. They're very reclusive. I bought it as a red-tail loach. That's what I've always called it. So I don't know if it is something else or not. It does have red dorsal and pectoral fins too. It's not just the tail, and its body is a really, I was saying how my rainbow shark has that sort of greenish gray body. This one really has that greenish gray body, and it's almost iridescent. If you see it in the right light, you'll realize it's got like a green sort of sheen under its skin or something. Really pretty fish. It's just reclusive. It used to live underneath of what looks like a ski slope of green on the right there. That's a big piece of wood, and it's hollowed out underneath, and there's a cave under there that you can access from behind. And it spent its life in there. That was one of those fish that I forgot was in there until it eventually got big enough that it couldn't stay in there anymore. See how it's chasing the other loach away? That wasn't like a playful thing. That was a get the fuck away from me. Loaches usually go around each other and in circles. They don't do that. So definitely not a very friendly loach, whatever it is. But eventually it got too big and it can't really fit in that cave anymore. So it just sort of lays in the back of the tank with its face in the opening. And that's as close as it can get to hiding. And, it's been in there for over 10 years now. A lot of the fish, a lot of my older fish are now passing that 10-year mark. I started fish keeping seriously in about 2012, and I kind of got my feet under me within a year or two. And, some of the original fish, like the loaches we're going to see in the next tank, I bought them around the same time I bought that big striped Raphael, probably 2013, maybe early 2014. So, that Raphael's over 10 years old. My Tenopoma was over 10 years old when it died, and they're only supposed to live between 5 and 7. Oh, pearl gouramis are super chill. Pearl gouramis are so chill that if you put them in a tank with any other kind of gourami, it'll stress them and they'll die. I've never mixed the pearl gouramis well with other gouramis, even other really chill gouramis. Maybe if you had like a honey gourami or something that was really chill, that might do okay. But I definitely would not put it with the 3-spot. The 3-spot or any color morph of the 3-spot, whether it's the opaline or the lavender or whatever. There's a bunch of them out there, and they're all assholes. You can win the lottery and get one of those really gentle, docile gouramis or whatever, but most of the 3-spots are not. They're asshole fish. So I like them, but I don't keep them anymore because it makes the rest of the tank too complicated for me. I do like the horse-faced loaches, but I don't have any experience with them. I've just seen them before. House of Tropicals has carried them before. What are you saying gets released over there and then it becomes a problem? Because I would imagine anything that gets released over, where are you, in UK? I don't know. The words are getting difficult to read. Three-spot gouramis are bastards when they aren't in a tank. Well, I would be too if I was a fish. They kind of need to be in water. Angelfish vary in aggression, and the key to how aggressive they're going to be is to what other kind of fish you have in the tank. Most other fish, they're going to be the victims of aggression rather than the perpetrators. They're the kind of fish you have to watch out for when you've got fin nippers and stuff like that. but they can be violently aggressive towards other angelfish. I've seen angelfish kill other angelfish through aggression over the years. I used to try to do mixed tanks and have a bunch of them or a pair of them. And I just, over the years, again, I like simple. I don't need complicated. Sophisticated is not the same as complicated. Um, Aggressive fish and getting just the right, that's too complicated for me. I don't want a fucking fish tank like that. I want a fish tank where everybody chills out and hangs out. Maybe like little, the way your kids might scuffle on the playground and then get over it and get right back to playing again. I don't mind that kind of aggression. And mixing angelfish together may not result in that kind of aggression, but often does. And so I just don't even bother with it anymore. So as you can see, the angelfish gets along with my pearl gouramis. I was talking just a moment ago about the pearl gouramis are really chill. They can't deal with being in a really high stress environment. That angelfish doesn't bother them a bit. They've never bothered the gourami, either one. The discus is the same way. They all just get along. Nobody bothers anybody in this tank. The closest thing you see to aggression is annoyance. The loaches will do that thing where they're like snooping around on the fish's body, like they're looking for parasites or something. And sometimes the fish will just lay there and like let them do it, which, it's a cleaning service. But when they've had enough, they've had enough. And the loaches haven't always necessarily had enough. And so you'll see them like trying to swim away from the loaches, and the loaches will try to keep staying next to their body. And it's just like, dude, get the fuck away from me. And that lasts for a minute and then it's over with, and that's about the end of it. I don't think of that as aggression. You got your black strap tetras in there that jostle and chase each other around and whatever they're doing. I don't consider that aggression. And even the pearl gouramis in there don't seem to be too stressed out by all the activity from the black skirt tetras. So it all just works. All those fish get along fine. And this really turned out to be a nice tank. It's kind of a mishmash of a tank. It doesn't really have any style or theme to it. There's no real color theme to it. There's no real overall appearance of anything. It just looks like a bunch of crap thrown in a tank. But it is also one of my favorite tanks, I do have to say. This one's almost favorite out of nostalgia. This was my very first large tank, I started with the 10. And then I did that for about a year and a half when it occurred to me, there's nothing stopping me from getting another tank. And I saw one on sale at Walmart. It was the whole ensemble. It's the very tank we're looking at now. And it was this massive 29-gallon tank. I brought this home and I couldn't wait to find all the different things I could put in this huge fucking tank. So after about 6 months of having this, I got that tank we were just looking at. That was my first 55 because the good old-fashioned $1 a gallon sale that they no longer do. So I got that 55 for $55. And, I was off and running at that point. So that tank has just been set up like that, like since the early days of my fish keeping. This one too. This is my OG tank. I haven't changed this tank in over 10 years. I haven't put any plants in there or swapped out the plants or anything. It's got really low lighting on it. It's got the stock, little LEDs that came with the hood. And so the plants, once a year, I have to get in there and trim the plants up. I don't think I've ever trimmed this Anubias up, and it's finally starting to get a few inches tall. But it's been just this little tiny Anubias sitting down in the corner for years. I don't think I've ever trimmed that since I put it in there. And, my memory's not fantastic, so maybe it hasn't been since day one. I haven't added any new plants. But I haven't scaped that tank. Like all those rocks, if you look at it, it's got plastic gravel in it. I deliberately left some of the clown barf coloration scattered through it as an homage to my early days. I've got store-bought pieces of wood in there. I've got a fake cichlid stone down here in the corner. I've actually got 2 cichlid stones. This is a cichlid stone too. You just can't see the opening on it. So this tank has more artificial and store-bought stuff in it than any, like probably all my other tanks put together, honestly, except for the substrate and my other tanks. I do buy the substrate, and I guess, a lot of store-bought plants. But I get my own rocks, my own woodwork, all that kind of stuff. That's part of the fun. Yeah, they definitely get aggressive when mating. They can get aggressive with each other when they're just doing the pairing off, and deciding who's going to be the biggest, toughest male. or the prettiest, handsomest male. I don't know how they approach that, but they can definitely get aggressive during that period, sort of pre-mating. Joe, how are you? Oh, well, thank you for donating blood. More people should do that. I should do that, but I'm really don't like needles, so I don't ever see myself donating blood. But I'm glad people do. Um, I needed several units of blood when I went into the hospital. My blood pressure was so low they were going to put me into the ICU, or no, yeah, the intensive care unit. They didn't want to put me in the ICU because that would have been a lot more expensive and complicated. And so what they did was I had so little. No, did I get blood? No, I didn't get plasma that time. Doesn't matter. It's still important. My blood pressure was so low. It was something like 60 over 40 or something like that. I mean, it was practically non-existent. And so instead of putting me into the ICU, that's what they did. They gave me saline. They put me on bags of saline, and I think they ran 4 bags of saline in me just to get enough physical liquid in my, circulatory system to create blood pressure, because at that blood pressure I wasn't allowed to go into anywhere except for the ICU. And so it took about 8 hours to get enough fluid into me that my blood pressure got up high enough that they were able to put me in the critical care unit instead of the intensive care unit. So that was fun. But I did not need blood. I thought I did. I'm getting my stories confused. I'm also on mushrooms tonight, so bear with me. Take everything I say with a half a shaker of salt. But again, I appreciate the effort. Oh, you get paid to do it now? I might have to reconsider. No, I won't reconsider. There are 5 of those loaches. They are striated bodia. Some people say they're the same as zebra loaches or striped loaches, and they are not. If you look up striated bodia, you'll find that fish. If you look up zebra or striped loaches, you get something different. So I bought them as striated bodia from some. I don't know if they're still in business or not. It was theirs are one of my mail order fishes. Again, those were the loaches I was talking about. I got really, really early on. I bought one of them at a PetSmart, and it looked just like it was just going to lay down and die. It looked forlorn, if you can imagine a fish that looks forlorn. And so I started looking into it after a while, because I always heard loaches were supposed to be active and busy and fun to watch. And mine looked like he was ready to throw himself off a bridge. And so when I looked into it, I saw that, again, they're a gregarious animal. They need to be in groups. And so I couldn't find any more. And so I took a chance on mail ordering some. It was doctors, somebody and somebody. And I got them in the mail. They looked like somebody's pet. They were shiny. They were plump. Lovely little fish. They were small, but, they were young fish. And they've been in my tank ever since. I got 5 originally. One of the original crew died after about 6 months. And then all the other ones are still in there. So those are all over 10 years old too. So hasn't been in the well, I guess you could count in months, but it's an awful lot of months. It's easier to count in years. It's about 10 years or so that those loaches have been in this tank. They've spent their whole life in there. Robert, how are you doing? All right, let us continue on. It's already after 9 o'clock. Time is starting to get all twisted up. Or maybe time's always all twisted up and I can just see it now. You got to get in the right frame of mind and you can see it. I'm not on that much mushrooms. I'm not on actually very much mushrooms at all. It's a nice, very, very mild buzz. I'm rather enjoying it. I was a little nervous about what it was going to work out to be as the evening progressed. The onset of any kind of psychedelic experience is always a little touch and go. It can always be a little uncomfortable until you settle into it. So that's why I drank it so early tonight. I wanted to get all that over with before we went live. And my plan worked perfectly. But it was a very small amount of mushrooms. It was 0.6 grams that I made into tea. I drank about half of it over a 20-minute period, and I could already started to feel it coming onto me. And I was like, all right, let's just see what this does. So I, went upstairs, got a shower, and did all that stuff. And like 40 minutes later, I came down and I drank the other half of it right before we went live. So for the first half an hour or so of us going live, I was still kind of feeling out where this is going. It was still rolling on to me that whole time. But I think we've settled into a nice little happy place. This is fun. 0.6 grams. These are some really powerful mushrooms. The Red Blue Colombian Tetras, I don't really know specifics on them. So, it's kind of like baking. If you don't really know what temperature to put your cookies at, 375 is a pretty safe bet. And with the Red Blue Colombian Tetras, I can't imagine they're a whole lot different than the Black Skirts or the Diamonds or Buenos Aires. They all seem to be, anywhere in a pH from 5.5 to maybe 7.5. Maybe 7.8. I think they'd be okay. They've probably been captive bred long enough now that they're pretty universal in water. I keep most of my fish in the mid upper 70s, 77, 78. They can probably go warmer than that because they are tropical fish, but I don't think they definitely need to be warmer than that. I wouldn't put them any lower than 74, and I probably wouldn't keep them at 74 for long durations of time. If the tank gets down to 74 overnight, but then warms back up to 78 during the day or something, that shouldn't be a problem. But I wouldn't keep a tank at below 75 with tropical fish in it, is generally my rule of thumb. Again, I know some of them can go lower than that, but it's just as a rule of thumb, 75 is kind of my low end. Right now, we've got a couple of discus and some random minnows that I caught out at the reservoir. I don't know what they actually are. Yeah, I figured they'd be pretty well universalized when it comes to pH and water hardness and all that. Pretty much anything that falls within the normal kind of water you would get out of city water, I know there are some places that have liquid cement, it's pH of 10 and it's 22 degrees hardness. That's not normal though. Most places have moderate to medium hard water. Where I live, it's soft water, but I do stuff. I have a well. So I do my top offs with groundwater, just straight out of the ground. It's not even filtered or anything. So whatever's in my groundwater is going straight into my tanks. And then the main, when I'm running it out of my faucet, in the tub in the other room, that runs through my water system. So I do make adjustments to it. I add some stuff to it, adjust the pH. I got some sodium in there. But my groundwater is fairly soft. It's got a slightly acidic, near neutral pH, and most fish could probably just live in my water unless they're really like specifically the kind of fish like African cichlids that need to be in really hard water. Other than that, if it's a soft water fish, it can live in my water, and if it's a moderate, can live from moderate to hard water, that'll do fine in my water too. The ones that need to be in hard water don't survive in my water. I don't even really do well with stuff like mollies. Honestly, I can't really keep a molly alive for more than a few years, and I've always chalked it up to my really soft water. Mollies do better in brackish water than they do in fresh water, and they positively thrive in salt water. You can get mollies big as shit if you grow them in salt water. I've seen aquarium stores sell them as saltwater mollies for $25. And I asked the guy, I was like, isn't that just a molly that's in salt water? He's like, yeah. All right. Fish store going to fish store. Yeah, they'll get you whatever the way they can if they can convince you this is some kind of special molly. But mollies can live quite easily in salt water. Like I say, they thrive. A sailfin molly can get like 6 inches long in salt water with a huge, enormous fin. Now, something like that, if it's already grown out, it's big, it's really impressive. I'd pay $25 for that. But saltwater mollies. All right, let me hit on some nicotine here for a while, see if I don't fall in the pond. If I can turn it on properly. I don't know if I just turned it off right. Was it already on? I turned it off or what? That's some complicated machinery. It's got a button on it. And believe it or not, I have not forgotten about what I want to talk about tonight. So this tank's kind of boring. You kind of pretty much seen what's going on in there. We don't really need to stand here for a long period of time staring at it. Almost nothing is going on in this tank, but I will update you on it while we're looking at it. Gilgalad is currently in the bushes over here, and he's still doing well enough. I'm actually beginning to think he's not dying, but he just has a swim bladder issue. I was feeding him yesterday. As long as he can get to the food, he's eating it. And I noticed the other day that he was swam out and he was trying to pick the food up off the bottom. And so I was like, oh, son of a bitch, he's still feeding. I thought he had just kind of stopped feeding. And so with him lying on the leaves over there, if I just sprinkle these, there's like a little opening in the where he's sitting. So I put a little bit of the vibrobites on there, and he's able to just they fall down onto the leaf in front of him like a placemat almost, and then he just picks them off one at a time off of the leaf. And so Gilgalad is still feeding, and I'm still making sure he's getting food. So who knows? Maybe he'll be with us for a while longer. But I really thought he was on his way out. So otherwise, I got 2 guppies in this tank, and then a whole bunch of shrimp. Shrimp. All right, where am I? Blue tetrafish? I don't have any blue tetrafish. I have those minnows in there, but I don't really think they're blue looking. Yeah, they might have a little bluish green sheen to them. I'll be ready to sit down here shortly. Yeah, I'm not sure what blue tetrafish you're talking about, Michael. They sound awesome, though. I'm a big fan of tetras. There's some people out there, I don't know if it's like a Ford and Chevy thing, or boxers or briefs or whatever, but I am a tetra guy over the Raspora and Danio guy. I know there's a lot of people out there that like the Rasporas and Danios and aren't a big fan of the tetras. I love tetras. I think they're awesome fish, and there's about 130 different species within the aquarium hobby. Oh, thank you, Dade. Remind me something about the goldfish. Oh, thank you, Gene. I was asking to remind me if I forgot to change the filters out, but we already did that. But thank you. I appreciate that. Yay, somebody's helping me out. I have to rely on other people's brains for my memory. Most of it goes into my wife's my wife's storage. I store most of my memory in my wife's head, but you guys are helpful too sometimes. So, all right, that's kind of all you're going to see on this tank. So let's just move on. This one, I don't know if it needs a water change per se, but it definitely needs to get the glass wiped down again. The glass on this tank gets that. It's not really noticeable right now, but there is a green growth on it, and it just diminishes how beautiful those discus really are, or anything in the tank, really. Most of the fish in there are pretty spectacular. So I ought to get in there and wipe that one down before Sunday night, but I haven't yet. Whew, I'm definitely going to be sitting down here shortly. I can't believe how fucking strong these mushrooms are. I'm glad I did not just assume like, oh, these are just whatever, and I like eat 2 or 2.5 grams of them or something. We wouldn't be doing this live stream right now, that's for sure. Oh, it's the blueberry tetra. Oh, blue king. Nice. Both of those sound awesome. Steve has some of the black phantom tetras. I really like those too, but I've never had those before. Now, I'm telling you, Zini, I'm sure you would get, and maybe a handful of people would get a kick out of me, like really tripping solid on a live stream. But I don't think it would be enjoyable for most people to watch. And honestly, I think you'd even get bored after a while. Or who knows, maybe be the time of our lives. Be the best live stream ever. Hey, TK, how are you? I've not forgotten you. Gotta wait till the last week of the month. Head down to Catonsville, and I'll let you know a few days in advance, and we can go over the stuff I've got, and I'll find out what you need, and I can send you some pictures of stuff, and so we'll get you all sorted out, and I'll get my truck loaded up with what I'm bringing down to you, and then we can arrange, a time that'll work for both of us. And it would be helpful if she can meet me at my customer's house, and then that way I can just swap it out and keep on going rather than I got a really busy day that day, but I will be in Catonsville. Where I will be is almost directly across the street from the Wilkins Precinct Police Department. If you look on a map, there's a little cul-de-sac, a little court called Jack's Court, just spelled like the name Jack with an S on the end, not even an apostrophe. It's a little bit north of the police station, but if you look at Jack's Court, my customer is the end house right on the end of that. If she could meet me there, I'll bring all that stuff down with me. She can take it, I can spray, and then go about my day, and that would be awesome for both of us, hopefully. Yeah, I like the lemon tetras too. I've never had them, but they're definitely on my list of what I'd like to get one day. Some darters and black nose dace. Nice. Hey, Go So Hard. How are you? Oh, those are the best, Art. They're rare though. If you ever come across those again, you should definitely buy them. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the lemon tetras. I look at them every time I go down House of Tropicals. Well, they don't always have them, but they frequently do. And for years, I have wanted to get them. But every time I've gone down there to get a tetra-like fish for a tank, I need a school of 5 or 7 or something for a tank. I've always wind up coming home with something different. My diamond tetras stole me away the first time. It was going to be lemon tetras that day, but I saw the diamond tetras. I was like, yes, please. And I don't regret that one. The diamond tetras are fantastic. I love them. See how if you look at the bright orange fish, they almost have like that hazy look around them. You really gives you an idea how much of the green growth is already on this tank. I swear I ought to wipe it down before every live stream. If I was a professional, I probably would come in here and wipe all the tanks down, get my camera lens cleaned off, make sure all my equipment's working. But I'm not a professional. I'm me. Yeah, I'll text her. I'll send her all that information, and then don't worry. I gather y'all just work it out with her, so that's fine. I'll just work it out with her. But you're gonna if you're the one getting the stuff, just again be patient. It's already what, the 14th or the 15th, so usually it's the 26th, 27th. I try to get it in before the last friggin' day of the month. But depending on weather and what's going on, it may be as late as the last day of the month, but it'll definitely be by the end of the month because I have to get down there and get those customers sprayed. All right, I'm going to give you guys 1 or 2 more minutes looking at this tank. I'm going to run upstairs real quick. I just realized I haven't eaten shit today, and my stomach is feeling hollow as hell. So I'm going to get that out of the way and just drink a protein drink real quick. That'll tide me over. And if I do drink my mushroom syrup, it'll go in on some food in my belly. I drank that tea on a completely empty stomach. And even though it was a small amount, it still punched me in the head like a freight train. Do freight trains punch? Is that the right analogy? All right. All right, everybody, your evening's about to get 100% sexier. I'm coming around there to sit down. So we'll see how many of you I lose. It's usually about a third of you tune out when I sit down. So we'll see what the ratio for tonight is. And do I want to bring my space heater? Nah, if I get chilly, I can always go get it. Once I stop walking around and doing stuff and I just sit still, I feel like I'm going to have that cold breeze blowing on my legs. So remember, I've got a topic and a show and tell for you tonight. We'll do the show and tell first because that'll just be fun. So if you were not here on Wednesday night, we did my members only live stream, and I was telling a story about being at a cider mill when my wife and I were still dating, like 25 years ago or whenever the hell it was. And I had grown some homegrown weed, just long story short. And I had this huge, it was like a Ziploc storage bag full of leaves. It was no buds or anything. It was just leaves off of the weed plant that I had grown. And we had gone out to the cider mill, and there was this donkey out there. Every time we went out there, we always would go talk to the donkey and pet it. It was really friendly. And so this particular time, I fed it that whole entire bag of leaves. It ate like 2 ounces of leaves. Now, what I know in retrospect, I understand that it didn't do anything to the donkey. But at the time, when I was 28 years old or whatever, I thought it was fucking hilarious. I thought that was going to be like the highest donkey in the world. And while I was talking to the donkey, my wife, well, my girlfriend at the time, snapped a picture of me. And I still have it. I actually keep it on my desk because I think about this donkey all the time. So there you go. That's me giving my donkey a kiss on the nose right after I fed him 2 ounces of weed leaves. And he looks so happy, doesn't he? Oh, that made it worse. There you go. He's adorable. I often wonder if he's still alive because donkeys live a long time. And that was, again, 25 years ago. I don't know if they live that long. All right, that was a fun story. Oh, you're not getting it till November anyway. That works out perfect then. I'm definitely not going to make a special trip for that. I thought you kind of needed it, like you had a tank that you needed to get covered. I've been kind of anxious about trying to get it down to you. I'm glad you told me that. I'm going to relax about that now. I did like Terminator 1 and 2. When Terminator came out, I wasn't even allowed to watch it because I was a kid. Actually, that's an interesting story, but we'll save that for Wednesday if you remind me about the Terminator because it's more of a point about society than it is about the movie, and I don't want to get into that tonight. Run away! Run away! Yeah, I've had some mystery snails get pretty big over the years. I always have more success with the neorites, though. I don't know why, but the mystery snails don't seem to do very well. Again, anything I don't get too hung up on stuff and why. If I have stuff that just doesn't do well in my water, I just stop buying it because I feel bad about knowing it's probably going to die, and I don't know why, and so I just don't worry about it. I just don't buy that kind of fish anymore. Same with plants. If plants don't grow, if I can't just throw them in my tank and have them grow, then I don't keep that plant. Again, I don't like complicated. Oh, wow. I didn't know they got that big. Yeah, the donkey didn't have a skirt on. That is not a clown pleco. That's actually a chocolate zebra pleco. There's two of them in the tank. One lives in this cave right here, which you can, that's who you're seeing right now. And then I got another one that lives down here somewhere, but often comes over and visits. I don't know. They've never had babies or anything, but one visits the other one fairly frequently. All right, let me refresh myself and whatnot, and then we are going to talk about my thoughts for tonight. It's got to do with the nitrogen cycle, everybody's favorite topic. And I guess it'll be more a look at the way I process information, the way I come to conclusions about stuff. Will probably be the moral of the story, but we're still going to talk about it anyway. So when I was in the shower, I was thinking about the comparison that I've made before about when we eat a lot of protein, we also need a lot of water to flush that protein out. And it's the same with your aquarium. There's a connection there. The reason we need to flush the protein out of our system, or the reason we need a lot of fluids when we take protein, is that protein, it contains nitrogen, like things like fiber, starches, fats, no nitrogen. And so your body's not producing the ammonia that you get with nitrogen. Protein does contain nitrogen. So when our bodies break that down, we convert it into urea, and then we store it, it's water soluble, and then we get rid of it when we pee. So you need a lot of water to flush all that urea out if you're eating a lot of protein. Now, the same thing happens in our fish tanks. If you're feeding your fish high protein foods, the more proteins you're putting in your aquarium, the more ammonia that is ultimately being released, and ultimately in the fish tank, it gets converted down to the nitrate. The difference is we don't have a way to get the ammonia out of our body until we have to store it in our body somehow, and ammonia is toxic. We need some ammonia, but large amounts of ammonia building up in our system is toxic. So we need a way to get it out. Fish don't have a urea cycle or whatever. Fish pee is more just water than anything, and maybe some hormones or some minerals or something in it or something like that, but there's no urea in it the way it is in our bodies. They just get rid of the ammonia directly from their gills, whereas we can't exhale ammonia. They can just let the ammonia come out into the water. And so that got me thinking about, does fish poop actually contribute to, I know it contributes to the waste load of the tank, and all that stuff needs to be broken down biologically and oxidized and all that stuff. But is it contributing to nitrate production? Because if it doesn't contain any protein, if the fish has digested the food to the point where there's no protein in it, then it shouldn't be like the ammonia escaped through their gills, not end result in their poop. And so I began to wonder, I've always known that the fish themselves are a main source of the ammonia in the tank, not the poop. But I began to wonder, is the poop a source at all? And just maybe it's not, maybe it's a bacterial load, and maybe there's breakdown that needs to be done, but no ammonia. So I looked it up because that's important. I did about 1 second's worth of research, and I found out that depending on the fish and what it's been eating and the temperature and metabolism and all that kind of stuff, there can be as low as 1.5% protein and up to 45% of the fish poop can be protein under the, no idea what specific circumstances and types of fish, et cetera, et cetera. But fish poop can contain that much protein. That's a lot. And so it's definitely contributing to the nitrate level and the ammonia production and everything that's going on in the tank. So what did we learn from that? Don't assume things. When I got to the part where I felt like a light bulb went off of oh, it's not the fish poop at all. Like, the fish digests the protein, and it gets converted to ammonia in their body as they break it down. It goes out through their gills. Like, that's done before they poop it out. So and I was going to come down here and guess what I figured out tonight, everybody? And this big revelation that I had, and I decided why don't you look into it a little bit before you go saying stuff about it and talking about it? Just because you've makes sense to you, but is it right? Just because it seems like it makes sense doesn't mean it's does or is accurate. And so again, a few seconds of looking it up, I didn't even do any research. I just did the AI search, and again, even if that's wildly off, the point is that yes, fish poop is not fully digested, and there still is a lot of protein left in it, or potentially can be a lot of protein left in it. So again, don't just make assumptions. Don't believe something just because somebody said something with the voice of authority. I used to preach about this all the time. I got tired of it and gave up. And I would always say this. I can't tell you how many times over the years that I would do a whole big rant about, like, I don't care how confident somebody sounds in what they're saying. You cannot assume they're correct simply based on their level of confidence. There's a lot of people out there that don't know what fuck all about what they're talking about and are confident as shit about it. And so after giving that whole lecture, I'd get the responses of like, oh yeah, I agree. But I listened to you because you seem to really know what you're talking. Oh, Jesus fucking, what did I just say? Like, I count in that category too. Just because I seem confident about stuff doesn't mean I'm right. And I know that about myself well enough that I'll go double check myself before I'll come down here and start talking about some new revelation I had while I was taking a shower. So that's my story about the nitrogen cycle and all that kind of stuff. So yes, fish poop definitely does contribute to the nitrogen production, if you were wondering about that, as I was. All right, let me drink this protein shake, and then I'll get to my comments and get caught up on everybody, but I am starving. As much protein as a quarter pound of beef. And it was delicious. Vanilla. All right. They do sound the most confident. Where was I? There it was. Depends on which tank you're talking about, Michael. Ghost shrimp, you can get 100 ghost shrimp in a little 5-gallon tank. I could have 10,000 of them in this one. I have at least one cherry barb still in my pond here. I started out with 2 and may very well still have 2, but when Steve was over the other night, I was trying to point them out to him, and I definitely saw 1 swimming around. So I know I've still got at least 1 cherry barb still in the pond. I didn't see both of them, though. Fish don't drink water necessarily, but they definitely swallow a lot of water. And when they're eating their food that's basically soaked in water, they're swallowing the water that way. It's a cloaca. Janice. No, fish pee. Goldfish don't have stomachs? I've never heard that before. Dennis. Oh, is that what you meant by you hit a milestone? I saw that you hit the 4 year mark, but I didn't know you needed a new badge. All right, I'll have to do something about that. Is that what you called me about today? I was asleep when you called, and when I got up and was getting ready for the live stream, I didn't have time to call you back. Yeah, I've got just the screenshot in mind. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I was thinking about that actually. Oh, I could do a weed leaf. That would be easy enough for a mushroom. Yeah, that's a good point, Ark. We should let Janice pick out what she wants the badge to be, but she said weed leaf, so I could make it a weed leaf easy enough. Charlie, how are you doing? I looked at those soft-sided orders. If somebody wants to stop signing me, I'm not going to take a dab with you, but I'll do a few puffs off of my e-liquid, and then I'll spark up another joint. Um, I'll talk about your pond in a minute, and we can talk about the way I built mine or whatever, and you can decide how you want to approach it. I'm fancy. Because I looked, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like a metal frame with like a vinyl pool that goes in it. It's usually like blue, and then it has one big open window across the front. It's like an indoor koi pond they're sold as. Um, I really, really looked at those long and hard. I looked at all the different sizes and options and all that stuff. And ultimately, I decided I was going to build my own just out of wood. And I spent maybe, I don't know, of course, the price of lumber now, you'll probably spend $1,000 on a couple pieces of wood. But back in the day when you could afford things, I bought um, maybe $200 worth of wood, and then I had to buy a pond liner, which was like another $80 or $90 for the size I needed, something like that. All told, it was like less than $300 for me to make the whole thing myself. And as by doing that, I was able to make it pretty much exactly the size I wanted. That was one of my stumbling blocks, not only what they looked like, because I really didn't like the way those, pre-built ones looked. Um, there was none that were just the right size. I would have had to go much smaller than I wanted in order for it to fit in both directions I needed it to fit. It was either too wide, but just the right length, or it was, too long, but just the right width. There was none that were just right. And so I built my own, and we'll talk about how I did it if you want. This produces ninja-sized clouds. I could be gone when the cloud clears. One of these days, I'm going to try it and see if it works. Duck down while the smoke's still there. Well, this isn't smoke. This is my French vanilla stuff. It bums me out. I ordered one of these and I liked it so much. I ordered like a 3-pack and I got a big discount. And then it just got stuck in the mail. It just said that they were waiting to accept the delivery. And when I finally tried to contact the company, they've gone out of business. I was like, fuck. And the day I sat down to call my bank and do the whole credit card reimbursement and say I never got the thing I ordered, while I was dialing up the phone, I figured I better bring up the account and so I can give them the order number and the product and everything. And it was an update saying your shipping status has changed, out for delivery. I was like, holy shit. And so like 2 hours later, the mail showed up and I got them. My 3-pack of them showed up. So I will be enjoying these. They're really creamy and smooth. It feels like nothing. It just feels like you're inhaling when you breathe in. And then when you breathe out, it's all that flavor. I got a couple different flavors. I got a tropical, strawberry, and this is a French vanilla. Not very potent, but 3-4 good puffs off of it. It does the trick. It gives you a nice little buzz. If I really want to get a good buzz on, we're going to spark up a joint in a minute. But this is nice. This is a nice little buzz. Well, I'm no handyman, I'll be the first to admit I'm not some proud macho dude that has to pretend I'm good at building stuff and all that. I suck at building things. I know what I want it to look like. In theory, I know how to measure things. In theory, I know how to cut along lines and stuff. But when it all goes together, everything's half a bubble off and nothing's ever quite right. Um, and I'm not an engineer. I did some rough calculations about water pressure and stuff like that, and decided like I'm overkilling it. I don't have anything to worry about, and I pretty much. And then even when I thought I didn't have anything to worry about, I made an additional fail safe against it. So I'll explain that in a minute. Let me get caught up on the comments in a puff. Well, there you go, Janice. It can be a crossover. It can be your preferred mushrooms, and I prefer mushrooms, but no, I don't like to eat them, but I do like to make tea out of the ones that I grow. That first batch I grew, I ruined them by overheating them when I dried them, but I thought I got like 50 grams of mushrooms, and it turns out I didn't dry them enough. And even when they're even the slightest bit soft, it's surprised how much moisture is still in there, how much weight is still in there. So these I dried. These are like, if you try to break one of these stems, these things just shatter. They're like cracker dry. I got less individual mushrooms on the second flush, but each one was much bigger. So that is a golden teacher. And that would have me fucking seeing, holy shit. I've been eating like a half a gram. Let me show you the size of the mushroom I made. This one was the one I picked up, but that was too big, and so I found a smaller one than this. And that is it. That's all I ate tonight was a mushroom smaller than this. And again, I'm not like tripping balls, and I'm not seeing trails and stuff like that, but I'm definitely having a good time. I made 0.9 grams into tea this morning, and today, earlier this afternoon, I was definitely seeing trails and, things moving a little bit. Again, less than a gram, and I was there. So really, really potent mushrooms. Surprised the shit out of me. So not bad for my second attempt. My first flush, I overheated them when I dried them, and it ruined them. And then the second one, I dried them at a much lower temperature, and they fucking pack a wallop. So, all right, give me a second, and we'll talk about the pond. So, how I made the pond was very simple. See, I sit down and pre-roll a bunch of cones and keep them in there, and that way I can just pull one out and smoke it. I was going to use 2x12s, but when I actually got to the lows and I stacked two on edge side by side, it was like up over my knee. I was really surprised. It was up to my knee. It was way taller than I wanted it to be. So I scaled down my original plans and I got 2x10s. But all I did was, let me back up a little bit so I can point at stuff. All I did was take the 2x10s, and you can see I laid them on their side, just edge to edge. Nothing complicated about it. There's no weird joints or anything like that. It's just that where the end is here, these are like 6-inch screws. I pre-drilled the holes so they didn't crack or split the wood or anything. And then I ran that screw way the fuck down into these pieces. And there's 3 or 4 on each one. So that's being held together pretty solid. But you'll also notice there's a bunch of silicone. I put silicone between all the seams of everything as I was putting it together. And the way I put it together was I laid a really thin sheet of plywood. If you can see that right there, it's a really, really thin sheet of plywood. I laid that on the ground first, and then I went around and put a bead of silicone on it, and then I would stick the pieces on, edgewise, connect the edges. I basically made the first rough square, laid the thing down on, laid that real thin sheet on the ground, put the square on it and pressed it down until the silicone was hardened, made the second row, lined it with silicone again, put the second row of wood on top of it, and then just to be sure, I honestly thought that would have been enough, but just to be sure, on all four sides, I took a sheet of that really, really thin plywood I was talking about, covered it in silicone, and stuck it like on the seam between, where the gap is between them. I covered that up, and then I ran a whole bunch of real, real tiny nails in, and just basically nailed like a patch piece on the inside, and I did that on all four sides. And then I siliconed up the corners, and I made it all like watertight. So theoretically, if the liner wasn't there, this would still hold water. And then I laid in a liner, just put a pond liner in there, rolled it over and stapled it and tacked it all along the edges. I was going to come back and paint it black all the way around the bottom, but my motto is good enough. As long as something's good enough that it's functional and it, whatever. I don't give a fuck if I can see that plywood there. I rarely think about it until I'm talking about it like this. So that's it. I mean, it was as simple as that. Again, I'm no handyman whatsoever. And I put that together in an afternoon and, very slowly filled it with water and monitored it. I was listening for creaks and splits and so on and so forth. The only problem I had with leaking, I was noticing, well, you guys are all wonky over there. Let me unwobble you there. There you go. You had wobbly neck for a minute. The only issue I ever had with leaking was I noticed that I was getting moisture down on the wood on the far end of it, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Eventually, I decided it was capillary action. The way the pond liner, because it's square corners, I kind of had to fold it into the corners and then fold those over. And so it was several layers of the pond liner sort of pressed together and then folded up and over the edge. And the water was just crawling up through those little gaps through capillary action and was just enough to go over the top. And that created an additional siphon sort of effect. And I was getting a little bit of water dripping out of the liner. So all I did was I pulled the screws out that were holding it flapped over, unflapped it, filled it with silicone, flapped it back over to mush all that silicone in there, and then ran the screws back in, and problem solved. The only problem with that was they didn't have clear silicone. I had to buy the white stuff. And so you can see like white caulk. It looks like white caulk and everything smeared on that corner. But again, whatever, I don't fucking care. But it solved the problem. And it's been, 2-3 years now I've had it up and running. No issues whatsoever. Love this pond. Best thing I ever did down here. I mean, except for create the whole fish room in general. All right. I feel like I'm ready for some of this fake mushroom juice too. So we're going to do a little cocktail tonight. Two different mushrooms together, real psilocybin mushrooms plus this other, whatever the fuck it is. I don't know what it is. It's good stuff though. I like it. I'll drink about half of it. Let's see what that does. Wow, it's almost 10 o'clock already. It is Friday night though. I can stay up late. I don't think I'll get in too much trouble. For the pond, I don't do much of anything for filtration. I do what I think of as dialysis on the tank. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Did you see it earlier? Were you here when the lights were on? Have you actually seen the fish swimming around in it? It probably looks a little murky now because it's after feeding time. It's clear during the day, but when they actually start swimming around and feeding and rooting around in the rocks and stuff in the bottom, they stir the water up a lot, and it gets a little murky and cloudy looking. I don't really do anything for filtration. I used to have, well, technically it's still in there. I used to have a canister at one end with a screen in the end, and I could lay filter material, and then that's attached to a pump that pumps it down a hose that comes all the way down here and around and then points back that way, and it creates a little bit of water circulation around in the tank. I don't ever mess with the filter anymore. I just sort of use it for circulation. Of course, the waterfall is operated on a separate pump. and crud gets caught in the waterfall, if you want to say that. That's sort of filtration. But that's it. What I do is, I don't know, maybe once a month or something, I'll put 2 pieces of wood across the tank. I've got a bucket with the bottom cut out, and I've also got a screen. It's for sifting soil. And so I put the bucket on the screen. I lay filter material at the bottom of that, and then I've got a pump I bring in here with a hose on it, and I pump water out of the tank and into the bucket and let it flow through. And I keep swirling the tank up and keeping it as murky looking as possible. And I'll do that for 3 or 4 hours. I'll just come in and check periodically to make sure the filter's not clogged. And by the end of the afternoon, the tank's looking nice and clean again. I put all the stuff away, and that's my filtering. So again, I kind of treat it like the idea of a dialysis. I'm just sort of filtering the water back into the tank periodically rather than just having a dedicated filter on it. I used to have colored lights and stuff in there that would change color at night and all that, but they stopped working a long time ago. I took them out of the tank, actually. They're not even in there anymore. God damn it, my joint went out on me again. I swear I cannot get all the way through a joint without having it go out on me. Oh, wait a minute. It didn't go out on me. I told you. Even when I'm chilling by myself and relaxing, I can go a long time between hits on these and still bring it back to life after it seems like it's gone out. It's only when I'm doing a live stream and I get on these 5-minute rants, by the time I get back to it, it's gone out on me. And I thought that was another case, but it actually stayed lit. Let's see if we can get through the whole joint without having to relight it once. That mushroom juice ought to be rolling on me about a half an hour. I put a little bit of protein juice on my stomach first. That's actually why I did it. Yeah, you need a big ass thing. Well, yeah, you could. And I honestly wish, yes, thank you, Charlie. Welcome aboard. I can give you a quick fish room tour. I don't post a whole lot of standalone videos anymore. I mostly do. I mostly do my live streams, but I go live every Friday and Sunday at 8 for the most part. And if you want to join channel membership, you'll get access to the Discord server where you can, interact with everybody else in the community. And you'll get a members only live stream on Wednesdays. And that's $2.99 a month for anybody if they're interested in joining the channel as a member. Of course, you can subscribe for free. You ring the bell, you'll get any notifications for when I go live and that sort of thing. I do occasionally do random live streams if I'm just in the mood to do it. So, at the very least, subscribe, ring the bell, and then it increases your chances of getting a notification. YouTube's not very good about it. But yeah, you definitely ain't going to get one if you don't ring it, Welcome aboard. Nice. All right. I can walk you around the room while I'm smoking this joint. I can do 2 things at once. And I don't think like being on mushrooms counts as a something. So, all right. You already seen my discus tank here. I do have a catfish that is generally not. It's some type of Synodontis. I bought it as a Synodontis featherfin, but it's not. I don't know what it is. And then, of course, you've seen the discus and the rainbow fish and blah, blah, blah. I got a joint in my hand, so I can't slap any pads. No, what the hell? I'm slapping some pads. I was checking to see if I got any flowers blooming. I often get the tiger lotus flowers in there. That's all red tiger lotus growing down there. And if we come down here, we got my fancy goldfish tank. That is Bruce Brown. That is Melissa fish. And then the fanciest of my fancy fish is Wednesday. So I've got a couple little spots on Wednesday looking like they're turning white. So we probably ought to get in there and do a water change. I don't even remember how long it's been since I've done a water change. But you see that white spot on her forehead? That's concerning. We have my ever cloudy shrimp tank. We got my other 125. Oh, let's see. I got a pearl cichlid that you just saw swim away. There's a jewel cichlid back there, if you see that reddish fish. I have silver dollars. I've got some minnows that I caught at the stream. That is my spotted tilapia. Rainbow shark. I've got a high fin spotted pleco in here. I've also got a clown pleco. I've got an angelfish. And I think that's all. But I could be wrong. So this is an unfiltered tank. It just has some power heads and air stones moving water around, but I don't have any filter attached to it. Excuse me. And this was the very first tank I ever planned out. Other tanks I kind of put together, but I just put them together with what I had available. I went out and gathered up a bunch of cool looking rocks and maybe a piece of wood or two. And then I came in and I put them in the tank however they kind of went in the tank, you know. This tank I actually sat down and thought about color schemes. I thought about the shape of the rocks, where I wanted them. And then I went out and I specifically found stuff for the tank. And I, you know, so this is my first intentional scape and it's been intact. I haven't changed it since I set it up. I'm sure the plants have evolved and changed over the years, but not a lot. Honestly, I haven't done a whole lot. I did take the filter off. I don't know, a while ago, maybe a year ago. I took the filter off. Just seemed unnecessary. Look at that little angelfish face looking at you. So that is my 40 breeder. This is a 55. I've got a red tail shark in here, and I do have a Synodontis catfish on the bottom. It's a Synodontis lucipinus, but it's really reclusive. I haven't seen it in a while, so it's 12 or 13 years old, or 10 or 11 years old. So it's over 10, and so I don't see any reason why it would have died in the last couple of weeks since I've seen it. So I'm assuming it's still in there. And then the rest are either diamond tetras, which are the sparkly ones, or the Buenos Aires tetras, which are the ones with the red and black tails. I did have a discus in here, but it passed away a while ago and only lived a couple of years, and it had been bullied. I put it in this tank to save it from being bullied in my discus tank. And it did well for a while, but then it kind of started fading and just didn't make it after a while. This is my gourami tank, although it's got all kind of stuff in it at this point. Got a discus, got a bunch of different loaches on the bottom. I have a bunch of pearl gouramis, black skirt tetras. Ah, my joint went out. God damn it. Got a rubber lip pleco, striped Raphael catfish. I've got a red tail loach that hides in the back. I've got a gorgeous angelfish that one of my viewers gave me. In fact, all these discus that are this bright orange color were from a viewer, and he also sent me, there he is, I got that angelfish hiding in the back. That is actually a lace zebra angelfish, and you really need to see it in person to appreciate it. Its beauty is subtle, and it really doesn't come across on camera. I'm a 29. This is my oldest existing tank that is still sort of existing in the state it was when I initially established it. And we've got one blue-red Colombian tetra. Somewhere in there, I've got a black skirt tetra. Well, I don't think I'm going to have a black skirt tetra for very long. That might not even be alive now that I'm looking back there and seeing it. So I've got a blue-red Colombian tetra. I've got my angelfish that I just call a smoky angelfish. It was a mixed veil from PetSmart. It's not any particular type of angelfish. I just thought it was gorgeous, and so I brought it home. And in the bottom of the tank, I have a clown pleco, which I hardly ever see. And we have 5 striated bodia, which will come out at feeding time. But otherwise, with me standing here shining a light at them, they're not going to. We also have my 40 breeder here. I'm not really happy with this tank at the moment. At some point, I'm going to change this tank around. So I got 2 other discus in here, those orange ones, but they are always hiding. They're probably laying halfway on their sides between some rocks somewhere. I don't see them in there anywhere. But I've got a few minnows that I found at my local reservoir. I brought them home. It was a shit ton at one time, but I've only got a few left. And they're really boisterous, and they stress out the discus, I think. And I don't know. This was my brackish tank, and I used to have my pufferfish Butterbean in here. If you actually look at my brackish tank playlist, you'll see Butterbean. He was a legend. So when he passed away, the tank just sort of became something else, but it still scaped out as Butterbean's tank. I didn't really do anything to it. So I just feel like it's time for a reset. Maybe someday we could rescape this tank or something. It's still going to look very similar. I have a particular style that I like, and like all my tanks give off the same vibes, but it'll still be a new, unique tank that we can sort of start over with. I just have to find something to do with the fish that are currently in there. A 20-gallon here. I got a betta fish in there that is not doing all that well, but is getting by. So we're going to wait and see. But when he passes away, and he's up here in the leaves, I don't know if you can see him or not. When he passes away, I will be replacing him with another betta fish. I really, really like the betta fish a lot. Lots of moss and plants and stuff going on in there. I got some African fern, a little bit of duckweed on the top, a bunch of shrimps in the bottom, and then I got a couple of guppies in this tank, and that's about all. It's mostly a betta tank. I used to have more guppies in there, and again, when Gilgalad here dies, my betta fish, we'll do some stuff to this tank. I'll add a few more fish. Betta fish are okay in a community if it's the right kind of community. So I'll be able to have fish in the tank and then also have the betta fish in there. It won't be just singularly for him. I got another tank down there that's got nothing but a bunch of shrimp in it. And if we went in the other room, I got another tank in there that's got a bunch of shrimp in it. That's basically the same. It's just nothing in it but shrimp and a piece of wood. And where we started. So that's a tour all the way around the fish room. All right, let me spark this joint back up. Oh, where did I sit on? It feels wet. Oh, wetness. What the hell? Oh, it's from me slapping my pads. I must have slapped the pads enough that the water splashed out onto my seat, and I just sat down in water, and that bothered me. I didn't know what the hell I just sat in. Dark Knight, thank you. All right, let me get caught back up to where I was. There we are. Indeed. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed your tour. There you go, John. So there was your slapping pads. Those were your 4th anniversary slapping pads. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, you definitely aren't going to have plants if you got an Oscar. Hey, Neil's back. A crescent-shaped aquarium? You mean like a bow front tank that's got the rounded front on it? I don't particularly like the bow fronts, honestly. Oh, you're quite welcome, Charlie. I'm glad you enjoyed. And thank you for joining your membership. Yeah, the crypt is getting out of control again. I'll let it fill the tank up before we do anything about it, though. What I need to get in there and do is trim out the damn Java moss off of my spray bar. Look at the spray bar in here. There's so much Java moss growing on it that it's blocking the water flow. It's just, it squirts into the moss, and the moss, I mean, it's still moving the water. The pump is still running and everything. Now, remember, that's been 16 months, I think, since I've done a filter change on that, and it's still moving water, but it moves it into the moss, and then the moss just diffuses the flow. So the water exchange is happening. I'm just not getting any real, flow within the tank because that moss is acting like a muffler, basically, or a diffuser, I guess you would call it more accurately. And, I'm a stickler for accuracy. All right, let's see if we can ever finish this joint. Another thing I like about these cones with the paper tip on them is you can actually light it while still holding it in your mouth. You don't have to worry about that stupid little roach bullshit. You can smoke it all the way down until it's done and still have something to hold. It's nice. Well, I don't know, what other fish you're planning on putting in there. All right, good night, Dave. Thanks for hanging out. I don't know enough about those kinds of fish to know how aggressive they are and how much space they need to, cohabitate in a pond or something like that. But that would be my only recommendation, was just to think about what you're putting in there as far as compatibility. If you're building an 800-gallon pond, you can put a lot of shit in that. That would be awesome. You can go fishing in that. I tried going fishing in my 125 one time. I took a hook with a little micro hook on the end, and I put some bait on it and put it in the tank, and I couldn't get any of the fish to bite it. It was back when I had native fish in that tank. It was all sunfish and stuff like that from around it wasn't my silver dollars and stuff that are currently in there. I wasn't trying to catch them with a hook. But the fish that were in it because I'd caught them on a hook. But once they got used to fish food and all that, I guess they weren't buying into that hook bullshit after that. I never did catch it. I was going to do it on a video. I thought it would have been a hilarious video to actually catch a fish out of my aquarium. But that's fishing, how it goes. Some days they just ain't biting, and I never tried again. I only did it that once. It was fun though. All right. We got about a half-inch left to go. It means I'm going to have to light it 15 more times before we finish it. Yeah, the brochures are neat. Yeah, I don't have any fish I need to protect myself from. All right, I'm calling that gun. You did, Zini. I'm not a huge monster fish guy. That's a question that comes up a lot about the different styles of tanks. I think they're neat, and I like looking at them, but it's like a swimming pool. It would be awesome if my friend had a swimming pool. I don't fucking want a swimming pool. going over someone else's house or going to the aquarium or something and seeing these, monster fish in a tank, and it's just the one big fish. It's really impressive and it's really striking. But I like my tanks, first of all, to be more like a natural sort of environment kind of vibe to them. So you're not going to have like an arowana in a tank that's scaped like this. And just having a single arowana swimming around in a tank that's scaped like this might, I don't know, that might be cool for a while. But I like having the tank and then having multiple different fish with different behaviors, and maybe some grouping fish and some bottom fish and maybe something hanging off a piece of wood somewhere. Um, it just has more of that whole overall natural ecosystem. There's no, it's not like the farm pond that's got a single pike left in it because it ate every other fish, and there's just one big ass fish swimming around in the pond, waiting for unwary ducks and whatnot. But again, that's just my personal style. If you like that's the philosophy of my channel, is you do you. I don't, whatever you like is the right way to do it. I'm definitely not going to ever scold anybody on the way they keep their fish or what fish they keep or whatever, provided you are keeping them, in a healthy manner and all that. I'll definitely scold people for the way they keep their fish if they're doing it terrible. Their fish are dying all the time. Actually, I don't, because it's none of my business, and I got way more important shit to worry about than other people's fish dying because they don't know how to keep them. Yeah, the ornate are awesome, but they get big. I don't want a swimming pool. Yeah, Ohio Fish Rescue has an actual swimming pool full of fish. Freshwater batfish. I think I have. I know what the saltwater batfish is. It's one of my favorite saltwater fish because it looks fucking crazy amazing. But I'll look. Give me a second here. All right, Ark, you better start keeping your fish better. Let me take my nicotine with me. That's what I really want to puff of. All right, we're gonna look up a freshwater batfish and see what that looks like. I think I have seen it, but I want to double check because I'm not getting a visual. I keep thinking of the damn saltwater version, and I'm gonna guess it's one word, batfish. What the fuck is this? All right, I want to see images, damn it. That's saltwater batfish. Is this? That doesn't look like a freshwater fish. Well, maybe it is because there's another picture of the same. Is that what you're talking about with the yellow fin and the stripe? Because that says it's a freshwater batfish, and that one looks really similar, and it also says it's a freshwater batfish. So this is what I think of when I think of a batfish, is the saltwater batfish, which are awesome looking. Look at that. Why am I on fucking Yahoo? Look at that. Isn't that amazing? So that's what I think of. How in the hell did Yahoo open? That ain't supposed to be Yahoo. Yahoo. So no, never seen no freshwater batfish apparently, because that was wholly new to me. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, then I don't know what the freshwater batfish is, but it sounds cool. Yeah, that the fish I was showing you, both of those were labeled as the freshwater batfish, and I wouldn't have named it that if I saw that fish. Like, nothing about that fish reminded me of a bat in any way. So I was kind of wondering about that. The saltwater batfish is aptly named. That is an amazing looking fish. It's like inky black with that fucking crimson line all the way around it. And Oh man, that's a beautiful fish. All right, let me look it up again. You have a 120. It's 4x2x2. I almost got a 120 that was 4x2x2, but I wound up getting my 125, which is 18 by 6, and it's like 21 inches tall, I think. Welcome aboard, Bob. Well, you missed me singing Yahoo for you there, Zany, if your phone died. One of the rare times I broke into song. All right, let me try this again. All right, I don't want Yahoo. We're going to fucking stop with the stupid Yahoo bullshit. We're going to open Chrome. Why does it keep doing a fucking Yahoo search instead of a Google search? I don't know. I must admit, I did a restart on my computer tonight. I wonder if I changed the setting. I don't know shit when it comes to tech stuff. Again, you don't know how lucky you are that we actually get through a live stream every week. I'm going to do it 2 words this time, batfish rather than batfish. Nope, definitely have to do it as 1 word. That's definitely fucking Yahoo. I'll have to get it set back up so I can do an actual Google search, like a real search. Yep, I'm getting all the same ones I saw before. Yahoo can go suck a bag of dicks. Wait a minute, is that it? Have a look at this. Have we tracked it down? This I could see calling a batfish. That almost looks like an angelfish all stretched out or something. But it says freshwater batfish underneath of it. But then again, so do those other things. This is a Yahoo search. So, and I'll scroll down a little bit more, see if I find any other examples. But so far, I'm just seeing the saltwater. Fucking Yahoo. Ooh, apparently some of the saltwater can have like an orange or even a yellowy looking stripe around them. That is a tropical batfish. Is that what you're talking about? Because that looks like a saltwater fish to me. It's up against coral, so it just says tropical batfish, but I don't even know what that is. That can't be it. Look, see, there's another one of those striped fish with the yellow fins that's called a batfish. All right, I'm going to stop wasting my time looking at stupid Yahoo searches. I'm going to sit back down. It's hurting my brain. My brain is in no condition for this right now. All right. Let me see where I was. All right, right there. You did, Zany. You missed a once in a month time opportunity. Or maybe he does exist, Genie. He just fucking hates you. That's what you meant earlier when you said somebody clipped that. I got you. Yeah, that saltwater batfish is awesome. So I'm going to assume it was the one that looked like that sort of stretched out angelfish. If I think about it when I go upstairs on my actual computer, I'll look it up there. Yeah, that batfish is a looker. I did keep a saltwater tank ever so briefly. It was a disaster, but I did it. I don't know if they still do or not. I went in Petco the other day to look for betta fish, but they're like on the end caps. They're not all the way down where the fish are. And I never even thought to walk in and look at the fish. I didn't do that at PetSmart either. When I went over there, I did pick out a betta fish I wanted. I walked in, I looked at the betta fish, found the one I wanted, and I went and rang out. I didn't even the whole rack of fish was right behind me at Walmart. They're all in the same, at PetSmart, they're all in the same area. I go to Walmart so much, it's just part of my brain now. That just occurred to me. I didn't even realize when I went in there. I never even looked at the fish they had in there. So I don't know if they've got new stock in there or what. But Petco used to carry, presumably they still do, saltwater fish. And I saw the pajama cardinal. It's a little black and white striped job that you see pretty commonly. And that was the fish that made me decide I was going to do a saltwater tank someday because I want to own that fish one day. And so I did. I set up a saltwater tank. I went into it almost blind and not really understanding what I was doing. It didn't even have a protein skimmer on it at first. And eventually I had a pair of those, parafish or pajama fish in there. Again, the tank overall was pretty much disastrous. I had a horseshoe crab. I had a white horseshoe crab for a little while. All this was in a 20-gallon saltwater tank. I had all these fucking fish, and like I stocked it as though it was a freshwater tank. I just had no understanding of the difference between keeping a very fine balance in a saltwater tank versus fucking any old thing in one of these tanks. So yeah, it was a disaster, but I did it. It was fun. It was interesting, but I quickly found out that as much as I thought I was going to be just in love with saltwater, I envisioned myself like doing reefs, doing all these coral, displays and everything. And I immediately found out it's just not my thing. It really wasn't. I just lost interest in it. The tank went to hell, and I'm just in love with my freshwater tropical stuff. I've never looked back. I've never considered. Now, I did have the brackish tank for my puffer, but a brackish tank is closer to a freshwater tank than anything else. It's almost like having hard water, or where you have to add some Epsom salts to your water for a certain kind of fish or something like that. That's essentially what a brackish tank is like. You just do regular water changes, standard filter, no protein skimmer. You just put a little bit of salt in the water when you do water changes. Effectively, it's a freshwater tank. Functionally, it's a freshwater tank. A saltwater tank is very different. And like I said, I just never really had any interest in trying it again since then. And I never have. Probably never will. I would say it's some good iced tea, but it's not. I drank half of it, and I remember right before we went live, I was like, fuck, I got to get my tea. So I ran upstairs, got it, threw some ice in it, and then topped it off with water and brought it down. So I never added any flavor, apparently, and so it tastes like brown water at this point. I can almost taste the tea flavor in it, but it's basically like water. It's all right. It's keeping me hydrated, keeping my whistle wet. Yeah, it didn't turn out well, but I can say I did it. Yeah, it's at the time I didn't understand it. Now, knowing I have ADHD, fiddly stuff like that just doesn't work for me. All my tanks are what I think of as being Dan proofed. They have fail safes on them. I got multiple water circulation sources, multiple air stones. If I forget to turn something back on after a water change, it's fine. I have fish that are durable. I know people think discus are fragile snowflakes, but they're not. They're tough as nails, apparently, based on what they have survived in my tank for the years I've had them. And that works for me because of my ADHD. Stuff like at one point I wanted to get into bonsai trees, and I tried doing bonsai, and like that isn't the thing for me. I just don't have the attention span. I don't have the focus. I don't have the long term, commitment to something like that. Um, and so for me, rather than treat my ADHD, I just shape my life around how my brain works, and I make things as functional as I can for who I am. And so again, I've sort of Dan-proofed all my tanks. I don't try to keep something like a saltwater tank that's way too complex, and everything's got to be really precise, and you got to accurately measure all the stuff and take accurate measurements, on a regular basis. And hell, most people keep a journal of all the measurements they're taking to make sure the tank is stable. And with corals, the slightest little shift in this or that can throw them off, and like that ain't my kind of aquarium. I already told you earlier, like when I put plants in the tank, if they don't just grow in my tank, they don't survive. I don't add plant food. I don't add root tabs. My tanks are as simple as they can possibly be. Again, the word sophisticated does not necessarily mean complicated or complex. I have very sophisticated tanks. Again, they're almost self-sustaining, but they're not complicated tanks. They're just super easy to maintain. They're not real difficult to set up once you sort of understand what you're doing and what your goals are. And I can just let them do their thing. I can just come down and enjoy them. We do some basic maintenance on them. I'm not trying to pretend they're like no water change tanks or anything, but they're low maintenance tanks. I don't have to do frequent water changes. I don't really have to get in, except for a few tanks that are really, really brightly lit. I generally don't have to worry too much about getting the glass clean all the time. I do that stuff, and I do filter changes, and but it's not like people look around a room like this and like, oh my god, it must be so much work maintaining all this. Like, it's not. It really isn't. If I did it all collectively, like I just picked a day, I could come in here on a Saturday afternoon and just listen to some music and smoke a few joints, and like I could do all my tank maintenance for the month in a Saturday afternoon in here, and that's it. That to me is not a whole lot of work. I spend more time cleaning leaves out in my yard than I do down here doing maintenance in my fish tanks by far. So it's just how you set them up. That's the best selection of what? Yeah, so was I, Zini. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was for me, so maybe it won't be for you. But I didn't think it was going to be all that big a deal either. Mike. Oh, you guys do still carry the Kane works at PetSmart, if I may be so bold as to say that. I mean, Petco, I'm sorry. So you guys do still carry the saltwater fish? I assumed you would. I didn't really think you wouldn't. Yep, that's what I thought too, Zini. Yeah, try one. I'm not going to discourage you. And again, you might fall in love with it. You might be great at it. I sucked at it. It was terrible. It was not the thing for me to do. I forgot what tank I was sitting in front of for a minute. When I looked at the monitor up there, I saw this fish right here, and I was thinking, my God, those silver dollars look blue. That's not a silver dollar. That's one of my blue discus. That explains it. I've kept frogs before. I used to get the African dwarf clawed frogs. I used to keep them all the time. I loved them. When I first really started getting my feet under me and I kind of knew what I was doing a little bit, understood the nitrogen cycle and the basics, oddball fish was my thing. That's why I had the knife fish. That's why I had that ton of poma. I used to get the African clawed frogs. I used to keep the crayfish. I didn't want a tank that had mollies and skirt tetras and stuff swimming around in it. I enjoyed those fish, and I had tanks that had those fish in them, but I also wanted interesting fish that like not a lot of people had. Especially once I started the YouTube channel, I wanted stuff to draw people into it that they hadn't really seen before. I got the puffer, you know, so I'm totally down with getting the interesting stuff. And I used to keep the little frogs. Now I've never kept terrestrial frogs. I've never kept, you know, tree frogs or, you know, toads. I did keep that one toad over winter, but that was kind of a housing it over winter until I could release it in the spring situation. Number 6, how are you? Yeah, I used to have the African dwarf clawed. All right, Zany, you do your thing. I didn't say it was difficult. It's just that in a saltwater tank, you can't have the parameters shifting, and you can't have, like, in a saltwater tank, it's no joke that you can't have more than 5 parts per million nitrate. Your tank will explode with algae and you'll have issues. So you got to keep the nitrates at almost zero. Yeah, really, really low stocking density, minimal feeding. You got to have a protein skimmer on it. You have to have a protein skimmer on it. You have to monitor the salinity. If you're getting evaporation and the salinity is changing and you're doing top offs, you got to make sure when you top it off, you're matching the salinity perfectly, because they're not like brackish fish that can just, you know, you just throw some fucking salty water in there and they're fine. It's a very narrow range. Freshwater fish are troopers compared to saltwater fish. These guys can go in all kind of water. You can change the water temperature. I can change my water hardness to some degree. The pH can shift all around between water changes. You know, there's a ton of parameters that can shift pretty wildly during water changes that doesn't really impact freshwater fish. Saltwater fish, that is not the case. They need very, very stable conditions, and it's a very narrow window of all those conditions being right. The pH has got to be right. You know, the salinity's got to be just right. You've got to have the right kind of salinity depending on where those fish might come from. So it's not difficult necessarily. It's just a lot more complicated, or I won't say complicated even. I'll just say complex. There's just a lot more. It's just more fiddly. Everything's just got to be just right all the time, or it'll run away and just get out of control on you really quickly. That was my experience. Everybody I've ever talked to about it, and their first, you know, getting their toes wet into salt water, that's been their experience. If anybody that's in salt water will tell you that's, you know, you got to keep that tank very stable, and that just ain't me. I ain't that kind of guy. But again, have at it. I'm not going to discourage you from it. If again, I did it, I don't regret doing it. I learned a lot about it. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what I do and don't like in the hobby, and what types of things I'm better at. Again, it was a great experience overall, but it was a disaster. Corn dog, how are you? Let's see. The king said you don't have to. Bobby, how are you? CM, I got all these people showing up. Where am I here? Yeah, if you've got a fully mature tank, you can take the filter off of it. I've done that on several of my tanks. And again, I keep talking about Dan proofing my tanks. One of the things is if I forget to turn my filter back on, which I often do, I don't rely on the biofiltration in the filter. It's there and it's, you know, it's participating. But if it takes a break for a little while, there's enough biological filtration going on just within the tank itself, all the surface area, all the plants. You know, if I forget to turn the filter back on, I'm not 100% reliant on the filter. If you got a bare glass tank, you know, I'd be be cautious about just swapping out filters. That's a different type environment. If you've got a fully mature tank that's planted, got a lot, even if it's not plants in, if it's just a lot of surface area, a lot of rocks and, plants and birds and things, then you won't really have an issue putting a new filter in. Maybe a little cloudy water or something like that if it's a smaller tank. If it's a big tank, just put a new filter on it, and that filter will slowly cycle itself in, and your tank probably won't even notice the difference. So welcome aboard to anybody I have missed that just popped in. Let's see. Never had the Zircon crawl. I've had the local ones that I catch around here, as far as I'm assuming you mean the crayfish. And then I've also had the little Mexican dwarf, the little orange jobs. Yeah, again, if you're talking about the little frogs feeding, that was always a bit of a challenge in a tank with lots of active swimming fish or whatever. And I would do the bloodworms, which I've given up on. I don't feed anything bloodworms anymore. But that's what I would try to feed the frogs. And I would always make sure I gave it directly to the frog. What I would usually do would be I'd put the bloodworms in some water, and then I'd take a turkey baster and suck some up into the turkey baster, and then I could put it right in front of the frog's face and just squeeze a little bit out, and a few little worms at a time would come out, and he would just grab them and gulp them up. And that way I ensured that he was getting fed, even if everybody else was, going crazy in the tank. If you're talking about the frogs here, I'm trying to follow along with all these conversations, but it's a challenge. Oh, you're always welcome here, Bobby. I got discus behind me, and then the bright fish are millennium rainbows, but they're albino. I've got some various live bears, mollies, platies, and stuff like that in there. No, I don't think I have any mollies. It's platies and swordtails, I think, in here. Maybe it's just platies. I don't know. I have so many fish and so many tanks. I lose track of what I got where. I just put stuff in tanks at some point. One of my viewers, there's some backstory to that. One of my viewers was moving, and he had to get rid of a shit ton of live bears, and he just gave me like 100 live bears. I put a bunch in my pond. I used them like seed. I just sprinkled them in tanks. No real rhyme or reason. I didn't have any specific group that went in this tank, or so they got mollies, guppies, swordtails, and they just got spread about. So I have live bearers in here, and we'll just leave it at that. The weather has been chilly for me. I don't like going out once the weather gets down into the having to put jackets on and stuff like that. But I am going to really try to get out on the kayak here soon, because we're finally getting some genuine leaf color. We've been dropping leaves for a while, but it's been like the dry tail end of summer leaves. We haven't really gotten like the autumn leaves yet. And today I was out walking around the yard enjoying my mushrooms because it was a really sunny day. It was chilly, but goddamn, it was pretty out. And I was just looking up at the trees, like all of a sudden, and it wasn't the mushrooms because they didn't that much, but all of a sudden, like within the last couple of days, we've got color now. And I started looking around across the valley, or ditch, whatever you want to call the little fucking whatever I live in. I think valley's a bit grandiose, but I guess technically it's a little stream valley. Anyway, I looked across the way on the hillside going up on the other side, and we're seeing color change all through there. And then you see the pine trees interspersed with the color. And I was like, holy crap, like now is like the time to go sightsee. So the only time I ever really go out on my kayak when it's chilly and I got to kind of put a jacket on and long pants and all that stuff. I don't like being bundled up and on the water at the same time. If I ever end up in the water, I don't want to be wearing layers, and so this time of year I will go out in the chilly weather, and I will enjoy the sights and the colors and all that stuff. Once the leaves are gone, I will generally, if we get like the oddball nice warm day, I'll go out one or two more last times before the season's over just to get it in. And it's always interesting to see the naked trees, and you can suddenly see rocks and huge, structures in the hillsides you never saw before. And you just spot a lot of weird shit, old roads, and you can pick out where all the trails are and everything because it's completely different looking when the leaves are gone. So hopefully I'll have a few more times out on the kayak this year, but so far I haven't been out in probably since mid-July is the last time I was out on the kayak. I kind of just feel like the season was over. It was a weird summer. It was really chilly this summer, chilly by my standards. Let's see. Yeah, saltwater, that's the other aspect of it. It's super expensive. Even really cheap saltwater fish are $25. If you get into anything that's even reasonably interesting, you're looking at 50, 70, $80 a fish. And then they give you House of Tropicals will give you like a couple of days. If you know them, they might give you a few days, maybe a week. But they don't give you much of a guarantee. Like the Petcos and the PetSmarts, they give you a month. But House of Tropicals, you got 24 hours. If your saltwater fish dies after 24 hours, you don't get your money back. It's your problem. So yeah, that's a lot of money to spend to venture into the hobby. Well, that's the thing. If you're good at it and you've got the experience, you might drop 80 or 100 or $300 on a really awesome fish that's going to live for years and years and all that. But when you're starting out and you don't know what you're doing, you don't want to spend a lot of money on fish that may not survive because you're still figuring the whole thing out. And in the cheap fish in the saltwater hobby are, $12, $15 for the really super common ones you might get at a Petco or something. But it quickly gets up into the $30, $40, $50 range. That's a lot of money to invest in experimenting on a new kind of tank you've never done before, Oh, well, thanks. Appreciate it, Bobby. Well, hiking is different. I don't mind putting a jacket on and hiking. And then once you're walking, you're burning energy. I don't burn a lot of energy when I'm kayaking, even when I'm really moving. My kayak's just sleek, efficient. It just doesn't take a lot to get it rolling across the water. And of course, I'm not working anything except my upper body and a little bit of my core, my legs, my glutes, and all that are just fucking turning into jelly all day. So I don't really work up the body temperature. And of course, I'm on the water, I'm moving quickly. So even if it's a calm day, I'm generating breeze blowing across myself. And like, it's a lot cooler, temperature wise, being out in a kayak than it is being in the woods where you're sheltered from the breeze and you're walking and you're climbing over stuff. And, I love hiking in the cool weather. That's nice. I don't like being out on the water in the cool weather. Well, I definitely have to say that mushroom syrup is on me too, and it's a weird blend between the actual psilocybin and that mushroom stuff. I was wondering how the cocktail, I've been debating since I started growing those mushrooms if I was going to ever mix the two. And here I've had those mushrooms for like 3 days, and I'm already mixing them to see what it does. Oh, I would love to see Epping Forest. I used to have a customer on Epping Forest Road in a neighborhood called Sherwood Forest down near Annapolis. But I've always wanted to actually see Epping Forest. It looks awesome. Let's see. All right, somebody can stop sign me if they want. I had a feather duster that I got for free. I bought live rock, and I can share with you another story. I'll tell you the worst piece of aquarium advice I've ever gotten in my life, and it was, if Kane, if you're still watching, it was from your fucking store, and it was the manager of that store years and years and years ago. Hell, you were probably still, in third grade or something when this happened. But it was at that Petco in Westminster, and I got the worst aquarium advice hands down that I've ever gotten from somebody giving aquarium advice in a professional environment. And he was the manager of the aquatics department, and tooted his own horn all fucking day long about how amazing he was and how much experience he had and how he bred this and did that, and just trying to overwhelm you with his credentials about how amazing he is at saltwater. That's his specialty, is saltwater and whatnot, and then proceeded to give me the worst fucking advice anybody's ever given me in the fish keeping community. We'll get to that. What plants I have are mostly all the same in all of my tanks because I'm not a big fan of buying plants. And I garden and I grow my own weed and I grow my own mushrooms. And so plants come naturally to me. And so when I have extra ones, I move them around, I put them in different tanks. And I have several that do well in my tanks. As I said earlier, like the plants that don't survive, I just never bothered to keep. So the ones that I know tend to do well, I just kind of move around. Mostly I've got lots of crypt. I've got a lot of Java fern. I got a lot of Java windelov, which is basically just a different type of Java fern. I've got some African water fern in my 20 over here. That's kind of unique for that tank. I don't have that anywhere else. Shitloads of Java moss. I got that everywhere. I've got Anubias. In fact, I'll show you an Anubias, probably like you've never seen an Anubias before. Anubias, I got a lot of duckweed. Of course, I got all kind of stuff growing here at the pond and everything. But this here is an Anubias. And I'm still not 100% sure if this is all one plant or if it's two. Because there's a fork, if you actually follow the... I've got a bunch of new shoots and spikes coming off of this. I'm going to be able to pull a bunch out of there. I really need to pull a bunch out of there too. I got this power head here that's supposed to move water across the surface, and you can kind of see the problem. Look how still the water is in the middle of the tank. It's, it's like glass. So that's supposed to be creating ripples all down the surface of the tank, and then we get a nice sparkly effect from the LEDs shining down on it. But it all just goes into that Anubias and dies. So I'll probably trim it. I do need to remove some of these. You can see how there's like that new shoot coming off of it. I'll get in there and pull that off. But if you follow the root systems down, there's two main bodies of root, and they look like they kind of fork off of each other, but at the same time, it might be two. No, I'm pretty sure that's all just one. So there's that one that's going forward right there. You can kind of see that smaller one. And then the main branch is this one. It comes up here. I don't know how much you saw the root system and whatnot hanging back there. Those roots are being blown by that big power head right there. And I love the way this looks being backlit. If you ever look from behind a Anubias leaf and look through it, they're gorgeous. Now these get a little crispy because they are a low light plant, and that is literally inches away from a spotlight, two of them. So the leaves do brown and crisp up a little bit. If this was under lower lighting, it would look a lot better actually. But look at the size of that rhizome. It's thicker than my thumb. It's a beast. And I also have some terrestrial mosses that are sort of growing in my tank. These are mosses that just kind of grew in there. I slopped them on from out of my backyard, and they eventually took. I was going to say rooted, but they obviously didn't root. Moss is famous for not having roots. Believe me, I know every time I mow what passes for my lawn, which is basically a big sheet of moss, it just pulls it right up and throws it all over the place. I tear my lawn to shreds every time I mow it. All right, back where we started. All right, I'm going to finish off my mushroom juice here. I guess we're going to start winding it down. I forgot about time. It's like 11 o'clock already. I'd be in here 3 in the morning if you let me keep going, which I'm sure plenty of you might, but I don't want to be here till 3 in the morning, and it is almost 11 already. I'll tell you what, let me go to the little fish keeper's room, and we'll see where we go from there. But I really, really got to go do that first. I'm going to put you on mute, and I'll be right back. All right, did I unmute you? Yeah, I think I unmuted you. All right, let me see where I was. Oh, look at them stop signs. Thank you, guys. Yeah, watch live. I'm glad you reminded me. I completely forgot I was going to tell that story. Bad plants for aquariums? Not that I know of. Um, I've heard over the years that if you go out collecting your own wood, you should avoid resinous woods like cedars and pines and stuff like that. But I've put stuff in my tanks that years later I kind of decided that I think it was pine, and I've never had any problem. I bring shit home all the time. I bring branches and root stumps and all kinds of stuff in the fall when the leaves really get going. Make sure you subscribe and tune in and all that stuff for my live streams. Don't know if I'm going to do it this year because it kind of turned problematic. But it was autumn and I wanted to have a nice autumn vibe for the evening. So I went out in the yard and I collected up all like beautiful, like red, gold, yellow leaves and came in and I sprinkled them all in the pond, mostly oak leaves. So I wasn't too worried about it. But I have no problems with just going and pulling stuff out of my yard and throwing it right in the fish tank. I don't sterilize it or put it in the oven or any dumb shit like that. I just throw it in my aquariums. So it looked beautiful for a little while, and eventually all the leaves sank and got to the bottom of the pond. And then about every 12 hours, I was down here pulling leaves out of the pump intake because it was clogged up, and then as the leaves broke down and rotted, they would still get stuck, and then they're all nasty pulling them out of there. I don't know if we're going to do the leaf thing again this year, but it was cool. And maybe we will. I don't know. I liked it. It was fun. Again, not that big a deal to get my arm in there and pull the muck out, but still. All right, I thought maybe I might have bumped my connection or something, and everything looks like it's up and running, so I don't know what's going on with the audio. Can you hear that? Audio? All right. I know I put you on mute. If you weren't paying attention, I did put you on mute while I went in the other room for a moment. So, all right, it seems like the issue is solved. So, I don't know how I should tell the story and which order I should tell it. Should I tell it in like giving you the knowledge first or unfolding the story from the beginning? I'm going to unfold the story from the beginning. This was when I was first starting my saltwater experiment, as I've been talking about, the disaster that it ultimately ended up being. But when I was first setting up the tank, I had the crushed coral substrate and everything. And then I wanted to go buy some live rock, and Petco sells live rock. Now, my understanding was that live rock in a marine system is the equivalent to the biofilter in our freshwater systems, all the living stuff. That's why it's called live rock. It's got living active cultures in it. There is a process called curing your live rock, but that's only if you buy like really fresh, like from the ocean live rock. Because what they do is they go out, they collect it, they throw it up on the beach, they go out, collect more, throw it up on the beach. And by the time they really get it packed up and in the trucks and buckets and shipped back to the, distribution center, a lot of damage has been done, a lot of bacteria death, and there's animals in there that might have died and all that kind of stuff. So the curing process is putting it in a saltwater tank with lots of oxygen and aeration, and you let all that damage heal and recover for about 6 weeks. And so that's just cured live rock, and it's just ready to go in your aquarium. You definitely don't want to put fresh live rock in your aquarium because all that dead stuff still has to break down and decay and it'll spoil your aquarium. So you need cured live rock. And that's what Petco sold. It was in the tank. It had been in there for however long. It was fully functioning and living and all that kind of stuff. So when I got in there, big macho, I know everything about saltwater fish keeping guy because I've been doing it for 64 years, et cetera, dude, tells me when you take this home, you want to cure it. You put it in fresh water, and put an air stone in the bucket or whatever for about a month. And that's the curing process. After that, you can put it in your tank. And I said, I thought you were I thought it was live rock. I thought I'm supposed to take it home and put it right in my tank. And he said, yeah, that's the point. It's live rock. It's got all kind of stuff growing in it. You have no idea what's in there. There could be parasites in there. There could be predatory worms living in it. You need to kill all that stuff off and put it in fresh water and kill all that stuff off and make sure it's sterilized. And then you can put it into your aquarium. And at that point, I was just like, okay, I'm not talking to you anymore. Like, knowing nothing about saltwater except what I'd looked up like the hour earlier. This was totally like a spur of the moment thing. Like, I'd done like an hour's worth of research into how to set up a saltwater tank. And so I was like, oh, I know where I can get some live rock. And I went over to the Petco, and that's what I was told. And I was like, that does not sound right to me. And so I came home and I did, I kept it in the salt water that I brought it home in. And I did a little more research, and I thought, yeah, this guy's a fucking idiot. Like I could just go buy pieces of fucking coral and put them in my tank. That's effectively what he was telling me to do. Take this rock that has all this amazing stuff growing. Like, it had purple colors, and it's this whole entire living ecosystem on this piece of rock I'm bringing home. And he tells me that, yeah, you want to kill all that shit off and basically strip it down to a bare hunk of coral, or rock, and then put it in your tank and let it sort of start. Like, dude, I'll just go buy a piece of rock and do that. What is the point of buying live rock? Just fucking sterilize it and then put it in my aquarium. I'll just buy a rock. And so again, that will live in infamy in my mind as the absolute worst fucking advice I'd ever gotten from anybody in an aquarium store. I've heard some dumb shit over the years. I've gotten some really stupid comments, and I'm sorry, there's no such thing as a stupid comment. Only stupid people that make comments. And so I've gotten some really dumb comments over the years. I've gotten some really bad, oh, you should do this. Like, no, I fucking shouldn't. And you shouldn't either. Nobody should do that. But from a professional at the fish store selling me the fish, the manager of the aquatics department or whatever, shockingly bad advice. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, take that Chinese algae eater home and put it in your 10-gallon tank. Everybody gives that bad advice. You get that bad advice for a dime a dozen. But what he told me, that was just catastrophically bad. If I had done that and relied on that as my filter, it would have crashed my tank. It would have been a disaster if I had done what he had told me to do. It was just terrible advice. There's a Fantastic Five now. Back in my day, we only had the Fantastic Four. I didn't know there was a Fantastic Five. I never thought about that, Bobby. I never thought about like the sinister aspect of it. He was deliberately trying to sabotage my tank, so I'd have to go buy additives and new fish and all that kind of shit. That's interesting. Never crossed my mind that might have been deliberate. But anyway, in one of those live rocks I bought home was a feather duster. If you've ever seen them, they're like a worm that lives in rocks and stuff, or lives down in gravel, and it will come out and it'll put out all these tendrils that just look like feathers. And it's a filter feeder. It collects them all up. If you scare it, it sucks back into its tube. One of those just came with the rock I bought. And I also found some creepy fucking worms and shit in the tank, like almost look like millipedes or centipedes or something crawling around on the rock at one point. Always wondered whether they were going to like reach out and grab my fish or what the fuck they were, but I got all kind of shit coming. Like, he wasn't wrong about there's like all kinds of stuff living in this rock. So I definitely got my money's worth out of it. I paid, I don't know, $15 for a chunk of it or something. But yeah, there was a feather duster in it. That was pretty neat. No, you definitely don't want to have the dead stuff in there. Again, you want almost no waste in a saltwater aquarium. If you've got if you're feeding your fish too much and there's too much fish poop and stuff, it'll crash your tank. It'll fucking knock your tank all out of balance and whatnot. So you definitely don't want a spike of dead stuff. You're not trying to build up. It's not a nitrogen cycle in the way that it works in a freshwater tank. I don't know why I'm talking about saltwater because I'm not really a saltwater guy. It's the same in the overall results, but it's not the same process of the nitrobacter and the nitrosomonas bacterias, oxidizing the waste and the ammonia and stuff like that. It's more complex, and it's the organisms that live in the rock, the microorganisms and everything. So similar principle. It's that microscopic biome that's living in the rock, but it feeds on the waste products and takes its energy from it in a different way than it does in our nitrogen cycle. So in the way we can rinse our, filter, our biosponge or whatever, and then just put it back in the tank and the tank doesn't hiccup or whatever, you can't fuck with your live rocks like that. If you do damage to part of your live rock, you're in there moving something around, or you scrub some algae off of it and you scrub a raw spot on it or whatever, that can be enough to disrupt the cycle that goes on in a marine system. It's a very, very delicate, balanced system that needs very stable conditions. I'm telling you, it's not the same as just a slightly more complicated freshwater tank. It's all the water chemistry is different. It's just a whole different thing. There's salt water and then there's freshwater, and they're completely different types of fish keeping. I dipped my toes in it. Like I said, it was neat. It was interesting. I'm really glad I did it. I'll be more than happy to share my experiences about it, but I'm not interested in trying it again. It's just not my thing. All right, Pranav, how are you? How big is the tank? If you set up a new tank, regardless of the size of the tank, and if you do a fishless cycle, you just like put some fish food and stuff in there every day and just kind of let waste produce and let the tank kind of do its own thing. It'll take about 6 weeks for that process to be fully completed. If you put a couple guppies in there, they're going to produce waste. It's still going to take 6 weeks or so if it's a brand new tank. So it's not like at 2 weeks you can start adding more fish. You kind of have to let the cycle establish and get adapted to the two fish. And once it's established, then you can start building up what's already there, but it has to be there first. And so you got to get the tank cycled in before you can start adding more fish to it. Unless it's a big tank, 2 guppies is not a big deal. If you got a 40-gallon tank, go ahead and put some more small fish in there. But still be very mindful of it. Check for your ammonia. It's not cycled in yet. That still is going to take about 6 weeks. There's no way you can force that to hurry up. Now you can spike it with stuff from a different tank or something, but standalone, if you've just set up a new tank and you're letting it cycle and all that kind of stuff, my experience with adding the liquid bacteria stuff, I've used it 2 or 3 times over the years. I've never seen a difference by using it versus not using it. So I don't waste my money on it anymore. It's the number one thing you need to learn in fish keeping is just be patient. Remember, nothing good ever happens fast in fish keeping. So it's a good lesson. See, that's one of my philosophical aspects of the starting the fish tank thing up is the idea, the verses, whether you do it quick by getting, if you got a friend that's got a fish tank or something, you can get some, filter squeezings and you can spike your tank and get it going really quickly. Or you can buy the stuff to put in there. But that you're sort of establishing your foundation of fish keeping on the wrong foot. You're starting it on the impulsive, like, I want fish now. And if you're going into the hobby with that, you just can't, you're not going to have a satisfying experience with your tank. You just have to be able to sit back and let things happen and watch your tank develop, and naturally cycling the tank in is a good way to establish that. You can put some fish in the tank early on. I know you set up a tank, you don't want to stare at an empty tank. Now, if I set up a new tank, I can stare at an empty tank for 6 months before I get around to putting fish in it. But if it's your first tank or whatever, I know you want to get fish in. I understand that. And you can put a couple of guppies in it or something, like you said. Just keep an eye on your ammonia. And, you don't have to sacrifice the guppies in the process. You can do water changes if the ammonia starts to get a little too high, and the guppies will survive the process and your tank will cycle in. But it's a process, and you just have to let that unfold and have to let the tank grow into its cycle. And once it's got a cycle that's functioning, even if it's a minimum one, because there's very little waste, being produced at that point, the cycle's now established. And then you can start building on what's there by adding some more fish, and then a little bit more waste gets adapted to, and then you can add some more fish, etc. So I think it's a good idea to start with letting it cycle naturally, just to get yourself in the right mindset of nothing good ever happens fast in fish keeping. All right. Ginger, how are you? Yes, I was actually talking about my brackish tank. I, for years, had, I've got a whole brackish playlist if you want to find it. I had a puffer, a figure 8 puffer, Butterbean. He was a legend worldwide. And he passed away within the last year or so at the age of 10-ish. But I did the brackish tank for all that time, and I've done another brackish tank that I had some other fish in one time. And you missed what I was saying earlier, so I'll summarize that. Brackish tanks are basically freshwater tanks. They're the same as if you keep African cichlids, and when you do a water change, you have to adjust your water by putting the chemical, the right amount of salts and stuff in there. No different than doing a brackish tank. You do your water change, you make sure the salinity is correct by putting some salt in it. It doesn't even have to be super accurate because the fish can, bounce around a lot. Standard filter, standard nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen cycle I was just talking about still functions the same as it does in a freshwater tank, all the way up into a salinity of very upper end brackish. Right when you're starting to get on the cusp of marine water, does that marine cycle, that different sort of cycle, is in play there. But all the way through the brackish range of salinity, you're still dealing with the nitrosomonas and the nitrobacter standard nitrogen cycle that we understand. So standard filtration, standard water changing, the tanks. Maybe with the salt in it, I found that my saltier tanks with the brackish water were more prone to things like cyanobacteria, which marine aquariums are extremely prone to. So my suspicion is the salt is the cyanobacteria finds the saltier conditions more favorable. And over the years, when I experimented by high end, mid, low, back and forth, I always got less cyanobacteria the fresher I made it. The more salty I made it, the cyanobacteria just took off. So there is that aspect of brackish being slightly different than your standard freshwater tank. But mainly it's functionally it's the same. So it really is a piece of cake if you're interested in trying it. But don't think about a brackish tank as a step towards a marine tank. A marine tank is just a different kind of thing. I mean, I guess in a sense, you already know fish keeping and water changes and filtration and that kind of stuff. But moving to brackish doesn't really advance you in any way that will benefit you really in the marine world. It's again, it's like saying I kept African cichlids, so I should be good at a marine tank. just because you're adding a little bit of salt during your water changes, that's not really prepping you for what maintaining a marine tank is like. It's just a different kind of tank. Brackish is a piece of piss. If you want to do brackish, have at it. You'll have fun. It'll be a learning experience. It's not complicated. The salt's not expensive. You don't need any special equipment. So I definitely recommend giving it a shot. And you get to keep some really neat fish that a lot of other people don't have. All right, it's a small tank and you're putting food and everything in. Greenish, yellowish. Yeah, that sounds like an algae bloom. No, an algae bloom does not necessarily mean your tank is cycled in. Hey, Sideshow. Well, I figured out not to get distracted during water changes. I do know that. Snakes and spiders. Nice, Robert. Fish and geckos. Yeah, I'd absolutely say go for it. And there's more brackish fish out there than you realize. I've had rainbow fish, Madagascar rainbow fish, or Madagascan rainbow fish, however that's spelled. They do really well in brackish water. When you're looking for potentially, I'll say brackish fish, they're technically euryhaline fish. Look, if you're looking like where they come from or their natural habitat, anything that's going to be coastal or lowland rivers, they're probably going to be able to live in brackish water. Anything that lives in mountain streams or anything like that, forget about it. That stuff's not, that's not going to be anything close to a brackish type fish. Most of the fish I catch around here, a lot of people don't realize, bass, carp, catfish, sunfish, the rock bass, the stripers, they're all brackish fish. They swim in and out of the Chesapeake Bay and up into the Patapsco River. Most of the minnows that I can catch around here can do well in brackish water because, again, there's a lot of streams around here. If you follow them far enough, you get into saltier water. So there's a lot more fish out there than people realize that are brackish fish. Most people can list 3 or 4. You know, you got a few puffers and the scats, and there's another fish that's real similar to that I can't think of the name of at the moment. And that's about it. Most people kind of don't really think of any other kinds of fish. But I had rainbow fish in my brackish tank. So, you know, there's a lot of possibilities. And it's, again, it's a good, fun learning experience. That's always been my dream tank. Well, it was my dream tank until I considered the smell of low tide. What I wanted to do was build like a pond like I've got, and then put a almost like an ebb and flow hydroponic system on it, where I'd have a sump that I could pump water out of it, and I'd have a sloped mud bank on it, and, you know, various plants and whatnot, and I could have grasses up at one end, and then have all the mud, and then have like a deeper pool at the bottom end. And I could do a tidal tank. I could pump the water out and store it in the tank, and then 12 hours later pump it back in slowly, and the tide would come back in, and I would literally have like a tidal mud flat for crabs and mud skippers and that sort of thing. It wouldn't be too complicated to set up, but the more I considered it, you know, this was in my early days when I was dreaming up wild ideas for neat stuff I could do. That was one of the things I've always wanted to do because I wanted mud skippers. But I've got enough experience where I live and just over my life with low tide. I just know what low tide smells like, and it's not a pleasant smell. It's not necessarily an unpleasant smell. You know, like how, you know, when you're driving in the country and you can smell the cow manure, like it doesn't smell good necessarily, but it lets you know you're out in the country and there's farms and stuff and that, you know, around. And so it's kind of like emotionally pleasing, but it doesn't smell right. That's kind of the way low tide is. Like low tide is cool because it's low tide and everything, but that smell of low tide is just sort of part of low tide. And it's not just the smell of like dead fish and stuff like that. If you've never experienced, you know, coastal areas or whatever, it's a unique smell. It's a low tide smell, and it's got to do with all of the microbiome and all the bacteria and stuff that's in the ground and all that. That's all producing odors. Like when it rains after it's been dry for a really long time, you get that smell. That's bacteria in the ground, like sort of being revived after being dried out, and it off gases, waste byproducts and stuff, and we smell that smell. And that's the smell you get after rain. It's from bacteria in the ground. And so you can imagine what's happening with the biological functions of low tide and mud and all, sun baking down on the mud and all that kind of stuff. So low tide is whiffy. And I just figured I would have something approximating that in the tank, in my basement. And I just decided I didn't want to smell low tide twice a day in my basement. But it is a really neat idea. Yeah, my bedroom. Fuck no. I definitely would not have it in my bedroom. Oh, that's a bummer, Bob. Yeah, I would imagine if you lived near it, you would just, it's like you're living next to train tracks. After a while, you don't even hear the trains go by. Yeah, the Thai micro crabs are awesome. All right, everybody, this is turning into a marathon live stream. So I think I'm at least going to get up in here into first positions and we'll see where we go from there. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I do enjoy my live streams when I'm on some type of mushroom experience. Smoking the weed's a necessity. I can't deal with you people sober, so I got to at least smoke some weed. But since I've rediscovered mushrooms in my old age here, I have been loving the shit out of these things. Definitely not, like I've said many times now, I'm not like tripping. I'm not doing what I did when I was younger and eating like an eighth and then like watching the fucking walls bending and stuff like that. Today I had, what was it, 0.6 grams is what I drank before the live show started. So half a gram of mushroom basically is what I ate tonight before the live stream started. And I have been drinking that mushroom syrup, which is definitely on me now too. So I got that going on. I love me on drugs too. I'm always more fun when I'm on drugs. I always feel like I'm such a terrible example. Everybody's supposed to say don't do drugs and stay in school and don't do drugs. I dropped out of school and I have a lot more fun on drugs than I do when I'm not on them. So don't look to me as a role model. I'm not here as your role model. I'm just here as some dude in his fish room on a Friday night. There you go. There's some maximum disco ballage. Let me get my big vape puffers out here and we'll blow some smoke into the disco ball. That's always fun. At least it is for me. Well, I know Zini prefers the I couldn't imagine me on something like speed. You guys would not like me on speed or meth or something like that. Oh, I remember the Brains on Drugs commercials. I remember all that war on drugs bullshit and the DARE programs. The DARE programs that like came into schools, that was after my time. I was already out of school. I already dropped out doing drugs by then. But I heard about all of the the DARE in school and letting you smell what the marijuana smelled like. And even though they insisted it doesn't have any, it was probably just hemp. Again, knowing what I know now. So yeah, I remember all that. Oh, I got a story for you. This will be a good how times have changed story. I was talking to Steve the other night and I told him this story and he was dying. You know what it's like in school now. And again, I cannot stress this enough before I start. I'm not saying things were better back then in any way. They weren't. This is not a good story, I'm telling you. This is not how school should be. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on the way schools are now. I'm just saying that I'm not one of them old men that says back in my day, that's the way we should have done it. No, we should not have done this in high schools. So when I was in school, In middle school, when I was still in 7th grade, I realized that the school policy was that you were not allowed to smoke on school property. It didn't say fuck all about carrying cigarettes around. And so when I was in 6th grade, I used to um, take my cigarettes out of my pocket to keep them from getting crushed when I sat down. And I would just set my cigarettes on my desk during class. And that was, nobody said a fucking word about it. Nobody batted an eyelash. In 6th grade, I did this. So by the time I was doing drugs in 8th grade and making my way into high school and whatnot, I had a couple different teachers comment, certain things that let me know that they could clearly tell I was either tripping. I had one teacher fuck with me a little bit one day when I was tripping in school on acid. And I had teachers say things about being high that they, again, just letting me know they know, but just giving me a little wink and kind of laughing because, like, kids are kids. That's what you did in high school. You walked into the bathroom, you couldn't see 3 feet into the bathroom because it was filled with smoke. People were smoking joints and cigarettes, and that was just fucking high school in the 80s. You ever seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High? That's not too far off from what high school in the 80s was like. Maybe out in California it was like that. Around here it wasn't quite like that, but that was common behavior in high school. So one day I was in my math class. I think it was my math class, and we had the standard school desk with the little cavity on the inside, the little where you can put your books and stuff like that. So I'd set my book bag on the floor, had my math book on the desk, and then in the desk I had a sheet of notebook paper laid out. And I took my little bag of shitty ass, Mexican brickweed and dumped it out on the paper. And I was sitting there doing this inside the desk. I had my finger inside the desk and I was putting it on a seed and sliding the seed away from the weed. And I was putting on a seed and sliding it away from the weed. So I just kept doing this. And I'm obviously looking down the whole time I'm doing it because I'm finding the seeds and I'm sliding them out. And so, I have all the seeds over here and then all the little crumbly fucking brown weed over here. So as I'm doing this, my math teacher says, my math teacher just stops the class and he said, "Mr. Hiteshew, unless you're reading Braille in your desk, I suggest you pay attention." And I was like, okay. And I just stopped doing that. And I very slowly dumped it all back into the bag and put the bag back in my pocket. But there's no fucking way he didn't know exactly what I was doing, separating them seeds out. He had probably done it, in the very same high school. The worst thing I ever did in high school drug wise, I don't know what I was thinking. I had this little, it was an Erlenmeyer flask, but it was like a little 50 mil flask and it had like the nipple on the side that you can stick a hose to. And did it? No, it didn't. It had a rubber stopper in the top and it had 2 holes drilled in it. One had a little hose coming out and then one had a tube that went down in it with a bong hitter at the top. So it was like this little tiny bong that I used to carry around in the inside pocket in my jean jacket. And when I would smoke weed in the bathroom between classes, I would do bong hits instead of, smoking a joint. And I got to one of my classes early one day and I never changed the water in this bong. This stuff was like foul by the time I would change it. It was nasty. And if you've ever experienced bong water, you can do a single hit through bong water. And then it just, if you spill it, it just stinks up the room. So you can imagine how bad this shit smelled. So I got to class early and it was, the windows are all there and the windows fold out. And then they got the big heater units that sit in front of the windows. And while I was leaning up against the heater unit, I just got the bright idea that my bong water was really filthy and I should probably dump it out. So I took the bong out and popped the cork off and just dumped the bong water into the heater unit. And I already had people starting to look around the room by the time I sat down. And when the heat came on and the fucking air started blowing through there with the warm fucking heat, oh my God, people in the room were almost gagging. And my teacher knew exactly what the smell. He knew exactly what it was. He was just gagging. And so he was walking around the classroom trying to figure out where the smell was coming from. He was playing it coy, but I could tell he was walking the room looking, to see where that smell was coming from. And so I'd taken my bong out and I slid it all the way up in the corner of the desk and just, that ain't mine, you know? And so I'm sitting there and just going on with the class. And the teacher was in the back of the room. And as he was walking up the aisle, he could see into my desk. And he's like, "What is that in your desk, Mr. Hiteshew?" I was like, "What is what in my desk?" You know, I just totally played dumb. And he's like, "That thing in your desk, what is it?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" You know, and then I pulled it out. I was like, I don't know, and handed it to him. And he's like, "This isn't yours?" I was like, "No, I've never seen that before." And he's like, "All right." And then he just kept on with the class or whatever. And I would have been fucked. I'm the luckiest bastard in the world. I've gotten away with shit so many times just out of sheer dumb luck. So that, as far as I was concerned, situation resolved. He got my bong, you know, but whatever, I got away, and so on and so forth. So I was going to go to the third floor bathroom and smoke a cigarette because that was a good bathroom to smoke in. But my next class was on the first floor, so I made the wise choice of deciding to smoke in the second floor bathroom on the way down. I'd stop, hit a couple cigarette, and then go finish going down. So when I was going down the steps, my teacher was coming back up the steps with my vice principal, and my vice principal fucking hated me because I always got away with shit like this, and he knew it, and it just pissed him off no end. He fucking hated me. So as they were going back up the steps, all I heard come out of my teacher's mouth was, and the student said he didn't know what it was and it didn't belong to him. I was like, I know what the fuck he's talking about. And so as soon as I got to my next class, I like gave all my weed and my pipe and all that. I gave it to a buddy of mine. I was like, dude, hold this till the end of the day. I got some shit coming my way. Just hold it. And he's like, all right. And halfway through that class, somebody came in, opened the door, and said, "Mr. Hiteshew, could you come down to the office, please?" And they searched me and they went through all my shit and they questioned me about the bong and all that kind of stuff. And they handed me the bong, and I made sure I put my fingerprints all over that before I handed it back to him. I'm like, "Yep, sure enough." You know, and so now if the police came, of course my fingerprints are on it. He handed it to me. I didn't, you know, they weren't on there originally. And so there's nothing they could do about it. They couldn't prove it was me or whatever. And so they sent me back to class. And I fucking, man, that was such a close one, though, because I had weed on me that day, too. I had a bowl and I had weed in my pocket and all that stuff. So good times. High school was definitely different back in my day. Again, not saying better, just different. But man, God, I stunk that class up so bad. People were literally like, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they had to like close the room down and like move the class to a different room. I fucking stunk that thing up so bad. God damn, I'd forgotten all about that until just now. All right, let's see. Are you talking about the donkey I corrupted? That donkey's probably died of old age by now, though. I corrupted that thing before you were born. Let's see, when would that have been? I was still dating my wife. It still would have been in the 90s, probably 98 or 99. You weren't even born when I was feeding that donkey weed. Yeah, we had a math teacher in middle school named Mr. Balmer, and occasionally he'd send us out to his van to get something to, you know, bring back in the class. And you'd open his van door, and you're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" You think it was Jeff Spicoli's van? It just reeked of fucking weed. And his classroom, the way the building was structured, the cafeteria was like a different wing, and there was like a parking lot, and then the side of the building, and like his classroom was right there. And so during the lunch break, Mr. Balmer would just sit in his class with his head hung down. He had an ashtray on his desk, and he would just smoke cigarettes. Like he looks totally defeated and just like a broken man. He would just sit in there just smoking his fucking cigarettes. And his classroom smelled like an ashtray. It was so gross. He never smoked during class, but like, yeah, obviously smoked in the classroom when the kids weren't in there and whatnot. All right. It wasn't funny at the time, that's for sure. It's fun. It's like a lot of things in life. It's funny to look back on, but boy, it wasn't funny that day. I thought I was going to jail. I was in a situation. I told the story before where the guy I was with did go to jail that day, but I played it cool and I got away with it. And Mr. Hilbert was his name. That motherfucker hated me. I can tell you that story too if you want it. Yeah, they didn't search people in high school unless there was no locker inspections and all that shit. Um, yeah, Bob, way back in the day when I was a youngster of about 28 years old, I went to a cider farm and they had a donkey there. I had been growing weed at my house, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I just kind of gave up on it and shredded it all and put it into a bag. So I had about 2 ounces of just leaf. There was no buds or anything. It was just leaf. And I fed it to my favorite donkey that lives at the cider farm. And he gobbled that shit up. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, snapped a picture of me kissing the donkey on the nose when I had fed him all the weed. And so that's my little weed friend donkey. I keep this picture on my desk, actually. I think about this donkey a lot. I often wonder whatever happened to him. All right, everybody. I need to start winding it down. It's 11:30 already. Yeah, it was definitely I don't know why all these years and I still try to talk with a lung full of shit. He was definitely a younger donkey. It wasn't like an old donkey when I did it. I don't know if it was a little puppy, but it was definitely a younger one. All right, last thoughts, final good nights or whatever. I really do need to start getting out of here. It's 11:30. I got a long night ahead of me probably. You probably need to hear some more stories then, Bob. You ought to get out more. The Wild West Casino, I don't know that donkey either. It was definitely a young donkey. There it is. Got my question tonight. I swear, not a live stream goes by that somebody doesn't ask me about growing weed out of one of my fish tanks. I don't know why everybody seems to think that's a good idea. I've never thought about it until people started asking me about it. I'll give my standard canned answer. I've never done it, never been interested in it, don't intend on trying it. Other than the fascination of seeing if you could do it, I don't really see the point in it. And with the nutrient conditions and lighting needs of the weed versus the aquarium environment, it would just be an interesting way to I don't even know really how I would set it up. I'm either not going to give the weed enough light or I'm going to flood the shit out of the aquarium with light. Again, I grow it. I make my own potting soil, or my own potting mix, and then I just grow them in soft-sided planters, the mesh-bodied planters so they can breathe. It's the cheapest way for me to do it. It's the easiest way for me to do it. We have over an acre of property. We got more gardens than you can shake two sticks at. And all my excess soil just goes out into the compost pile, or if I've got like a low spot in the yard that I'm trying to fill in, I'll just keep putting my soil in that until it builds it up. So, if I lived in an apartment somewhere and I had to carry shit up in and out and, answer questions about why are you taking 15 bags of, Miracle-Gro up, and, then maybe an aquaponic or a hydroponic system or something like that might work better. Reactions of a cat. I caught it. Notice I didn't say reflexes. I said reactions. They're different things. But yeah, so the way I do it is just the cheapest, easiest, most convenient. And from everything I've ever done in terms of looking at videos where people have done side by side, we're going to do a hydroponic versus cocoa versus soil. I always get the same results, and it's a really strange end result. The end result is always it's either one or the other. The cocoa does okay, but for what you're looking for, you're either going to go with the hydroponic or you're going to go with the soil, in my opinion. So what you always get with the hydroponic is, well, I got all these really big buds and it's huge, and look at the size of this thing compared to the one that's grown in the soil. And that's fine visually, but then when you put it on a scale, you find out that the hydroponic is either on par with or maybe slightly above what the soil grown one is. So there's not a whole lot of gain. It's just fluffier. It looks bigger, but it's not more mass. And then everybody always breaks it down when they do the, and this is a subjective, they're puffing on it. But I have seen objective tests where they've tested THC levels. They usually come out pretty much on par. Experience wise and flavor wise, subjectively, most people say that the soil grown is better. It's got more flavor, it's more complexities to it, the buzz is nicer, than it is with the hydroponics. So, in conclusion, we recommend hydroponics. We think this is the winner. Like every time it does that. Like, what the fuck did I just watch? Like, you just told me weight wise, it's virtually the same. Potency wise, it's virtually the same. But this one has a lot better flavor and a much better experience. So that one over there is the winner. Like, why? Like, in what world is that the winner to you? To me, the winner is the one that gives you the better experience and tastes better. If I have to sacrifice, 5 grams of weed and one, I got 3 ounces of weed and, I didn't get 3 ounces and 3 grams. Fucking who cares? It never made any sense to me to do the hydroponic thing unless you're on the space station. That's a good place to do that kind of stuff. If you live on a 10-story walk up, that's a good place to do hydroponics. I live in the woods. I can just shovel shit out my window into my gardens. I don't have to worry about it. So that's my sort of overall philosophy on growing in the soil and why I always have and pretty much probably always will. It would be an interesting experiment, but I'd never thought about it until it comes up a lot, though. Almost every live stream, I get somebody asking me about growing weed. And yeah, I think if I did it, I would probably do the autoflower. All right, I'll keep doing it. Starting to lose you guys, so we're going to call that a night. And I'm going to say thanks for watching. If you let me start talking again, we'll be here till morning, and I don't want to do that. I know you might want me to do that, but I don't want me to do that. So, Zany, if you're still up, you want to hit me up, I'll be hanging out, as you probably know. So you can chat me up, or if you're ready for bed, that's cool too. Otherwise, everybody else, I will see you on Sunday night. Again, if you're not a member and you'd like to be, it's $2.99 a month, and you'll get a third members only live stream on Wednesdays, and you'll get access to the Discord and so on and so forth. So $2.99 a month, join the membership. At the very least, subscribe, hit the bell, all that YouTube stuff. And that way you'll catch all my live streams. If you had a good time tonight, I know I did. And my night is a long way from over. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on Sunday. See ya.